and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Sudan's army has recaptured the presidential palace in the centre of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces. Flights will restart at Heathrow Airport after a major power outage forced it to shut down, delaying thousands of passengers around the world. And Disney's remake of Snow White hits movie theatres surrounded in controversy. Our top story, Sudan's army has recaptured the presidential palace in the centre of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces. State television has broadcast scenes of fighters celebrating in what's been described as a pivotal moment in the two-year civil war. We can see the pictures of that right now on our screens. And I'm happy to say we are now joined by our Middle East security analyst, Dr. Riyad Kawaji. Good evening to you, Dr. Kawaji. Thank you so much for joining me. First of all, this conflict has been going on for 2 years. This has been described as a real key moment. Can you tell us why?
In such conflicts and such regimes, the control of the capital, especially the presidential palace, is extremely symbolic. It is seen as the center of gravity in the country. Who controls a city, especially the seat of power, symbolically to the people, he is now the actual ruler. He has the legitimate right to be in there. So in this long conflict, now we've seen the Sudanese armed forces make this steady progress over the past few weeks, and now they have managed to sack the capital and gain complete control of it and evict the RSF forces. So this is a significant move.
As you say, a significant moment, but despite the Sudan army claiming this victory, Riyad, the RSF says the battle for the palace is not over. So what is the situation on the ground? Is it complex still?
So they have evicted these troops from the city, the RSF fighters, but the RSF still control vast territory in the country. They are still in Darfur, they are on Kordofan, which is borders the capital. So the possibility of making a counterattack is still high. So we need to see and make sure that the armed forces or the Sudanese army will be able to retain control and drive the RSF forces further away from the capital and keep the momentum of the offensive, capturing more territory, especially in the south and the western part of the country, which is the stronghold of the RSF.
This conflict is causing the world's largest humanitarian crisis. What are the living situations now in Sudan for people?
Oh, it is dire. It's one of the worst. The UN describes it as one of the worst disasters they have at their hand today. You're talking about nearly 9 million people displaced as a result of this war. Number of casualties estimated to be in the range of 150,000. A lot of people injured, a lot of people missing. There were atrocities committed, genocide. It's been one of the worst disasters that has been recorded, especially in 2023, 2024 by the UN, and it's still going on.
Middle East security analyst Dr. Riyad Kawaji, it's always great having you in the studio. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can now join our correspondent Naba Mohiedeen in Port Sudan. Thank you so much for joining me. First of all, what's the latest there? Apologies, we're having a few technical issues. We hope we can go back to Naba in Port Sudan when we get up that line. So that's our correspondent who was meant to join us, just discussing the latest on the situation in Sudan. A statement released by Heathrow Airport says flights will restart later today and that it's hoped to run a full operation tomorrow. It comes after it was forced to shut down after 2 explosions and a fire at a nearby electricity substation wiped out its power. Thousands of flights had to be cancelled, causing travel chaos for tens of thousands of passengers around the world. Counter-terror police are leading the investigation into the fire. For more on this, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by travel journalist and broadcaster Simon Calder. Simon, thank you so much for joining me. So this unprecedented incident is still causing absolute chaos, but flights are restarting now. Seems to be a positive development.
Yes, it's been an appalling day at the busiest airport in Europe. What we have seen is a huge number of flights, over 1,300, containing, or should have been containing, about 250,000 people, just all cancelled. Now, in the past few minutes, operations have begun once again at London Heathrow, but this is entirely moving aircraft back from the various places around Europe that they have been diverted to first thing this morning. And we will get 8 flights leaving the UK tonight, including to Riyadh, to Cape Town, to Johannesburg, to Buenos Aires and to Sydney via Singapore. It does leave, though, the huge problem of getting aircraft, pilots, cabin crew and passengers back into their positions, which I'm afraid is going to be a difficult business because there's very, very little slack in the system at London Heathrow. It's pretty much full to capacity at all times.
Simon, airlines are really questioning how such crucial infrastructure could fail. Do we know any more about how this might have happened?
Well, look, it's very, very difficult to say why there was an apparent single point of failure in the electricity supply. Of course, Heathrow, being such a huge airport, is rather like a small city in terms of the amount of power that it draws from the electricity grid. But one would have imagined that there would be many ways of routing electricity into the airport without having to shut down everything. Initially, we were told that this was going to be going on for another 7 hours until midnight UK time. It's good to see that that hasn't happened. I understand that 2 of the terminals, 3 and 5, are now back in operation, but people are being told, do not go to the airport because we don't know if your flight is going to be unless you know for certain your flight is going to be operating. And the vast majority of them on British Airways, on Virgin Atlantic, on Lufthansa and all the other airlines are cancelled today.
Simon, what can people do who are actually stranded? We know it's not just people in the UK, but it's around the whole world, because obviously you transfer through certain airports to Heathrow. It must be such a sticky, difficult situation also for these airlines to keep control of.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's almost impossible. In Europe, there are very strong passenger rights, which means that anybody booked on British Airways, for instance, is able to demand that they are rebooked on another flight as soon as possible. But the problem is there simply aren't the seats available. Once flights restart, and there's hoping to be a near normal operation tomorrow in and out of London Heathrow, then it's people who are already booked on those flights who take priority, and everybody else just has to scrabble for the few remaining seats. It's heartbreaking for so many people who may be heading off on the vacation of a lifetime, going to a family wedding, an important business trip, and they've just seen their travel plans torn up.
Absolutely, Simon Calder. Thank you so much for joining me. Much appreciated. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has told the military to seize additional areas in Gaza. He's also said that the military would continue its ground operation in Gaza with increasing intensity until all the hostages, both living and dead, were returned by Hamas. Protesters in Turkey have continued for a second night following the arrest of Istanbul Mayor Erkam İmamoğlu. That's despite a 4-day protest ban being in place. İmamoğlu is a key rival to Turkish President Erdogan and was set to be named a presidential candidate for 2028. Erdogan has said Turkey won't surrender to street terror. Now, over 40 men are accusing the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch of rape, sexual assault or drugging. Mike Jeffries was charged with sex trafficking in October. He's now facing multiple lawsuits claiming he assaulted men under the disguise of modelling opportunities. The former chief has denied the claims that go as far back as the 90s. And finally, some users of TikTok are asking for the chubby filter to be banned from the social media platform. It uses artificial intelligence to alter pictures and make people look like they've put on weight. Some users believe that it is a form of body shaming. Meanwhile, experts have also warned the filter could fuel a toxic diet culture online. In the last hour, US President Donald Trump has been addressing reporters in the Oval Office, saying there'll be flexibility on tariffs and America can't be expected to carry Canada, reiterating it should become the 51st state. Meanwhile, he's also signed an executive order aimed at starting the process of dismantling the Department of Education. The latest move by the president has pleased many Republicans, but it has also concerned many parents. And there's been a very public and ongoing spat over whether the White House deliberately ignored a judge's order when it came to a Venezuelan deportation flight. Well, it's just another week in Trump's America. Correspondent Sarah Firth breaks it down for us.
Another day, another executive order from US President Donald Trump, this time taking aim at the Department of Education, with the order starting the process to essentially dismantle the Federal Department of Education. The order could leave school policy almost entirely in the hands of states and local boards.
But we're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. Absolutely, it's going to work.
It's a campaign promise the president ran on, and a long-standing conservative goal. So, a thumbs up from many. But educators across the country say the writing is on the wall, that this will directly impact minority children and children from lower income families.
For many of my students, there's already a feeling that nobody cares about me, that I'm responsible for myself, like nobody gives a beep about me. And I think that this very much would affirm that for them. I think that it also would cause them to say, well, why is it that I am not important enough just because I happen to be brown, just because I happen to be a minority, just because I happen to be low income? Why should I have less than because of choices that other people made? Kids who are from families that are low income, the children did not choose to be low income.
Kindergarten teacher Lisa Morgan says if the Department of Education goes, someone else will have to administer the funds. And without the skills and expertise needed, things could begin falling through the cracks.
So that guardrail to ensure that we are fulfilling the promise that every single child has the right to a free and appropriate public education. That guardrail is gone, and it is always going to be concerning that that's missing.
The president doesn't have the standing to close the Department of Education. That would require an act of Congress, but it certainly begins the process and has left many parents across America wondering what this new direction will mean for their children. It's not the only upheaval of the week, not even close. An ongoing dispute over whether the president ignored a court order over the deportations of people accused of being part of a Venezuelan gang is escalating.
I think it's pretty clear that the courts can't second guess whether there's an invasion and whether the president's cause to remove someone. But the courts may have some role to decide if a particular person is actually affiliated with that alien enemy. In other words, would a person be a member of this Venezuelan gang, or maybe they're not? So I think the courts have asserted some power. What's sort of unique that happened here was that the judge ruled that planes had to be turned around mid-air.
Some are going further in describing this unique situation.
In my view, we are already in a constitutional crisis.
A judge in the case has extended the deadline for the Trump administration to provide a sworn declaration from a cabinet official about the executive branch actions. From an alleged constitutional crisis to a potential educational one. It's just another week in Trump's America, where, for better or worse, he's keeping promises he made during his campaign and enacting change fast. Sarah Firth, Al Arabiya News, Washington, D.C.
Now, the action remake of the classic Disney film Snow White hits movie theatres today, but the film has faced a number of controversies that could potentially threaten its performance at the box office. It's faced political issues, culture wars, and had poor reviews by movie critics. For more on this, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by entertainment reporter Stephanie Tecci. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me. This film was hoping to ride the wave of some other classic movies that have been remade recently, but has really faced a number of controversies, one being about the dwarves in the movie. Is there any more you can tell us?
Yes, indeed, Leigh Ann. This remake has attracted an avalanche of controversy, primarily to do with the dwarfs. It's in the title. The classic film that came out in 1937 was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which initially was the working title for this film. But Peter Dinklage, who's a Hollywood actor who suffers from dwarfism, came out and attacked Disney and said this film is going to be backwards, depicting the seven dwarfs living in a cave. How can Disney say you guys are progressive and still depicting the seven dwarves in this way? So Disney consulted with the dwarfism community as they wanted to not redefine stereotypes of people who suffer from dwarfism. So instead, what they've done now, they've gone to the extreme now, Leigh Ann, and they've changed the title to Snow White and the Magical Creatures, and also they've actually got rid of all the human dwarfs, and now they've introduced all these CGI animated magical creatures. As you can imagine, for actors who are in the dwarfism community, the roles they get are very far and few. And for a beloved Disney title such as this to now be alienated and hasn't gone down well.
Yes, indeed, Stephanie. And its two main stars' views on the Israel-Palestinian war have also been a major issue.
Yeah, Leigh Ann, I know actors love to be political, but when it comes to promotion and when it comes to production, most Hollywood houses would like the politics to be left out of it. But here we have two of its main stars, Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen. She actually previously served in the IDF, and she's been quite vocal about Hamas releasing Israeli hostages. While on the other side now, we have Rachel Zelger, who's been quite pro-Palestine, and she's been quite vocal about her support for Palestine. And what's happened here, there's been a lot of news stories which I've covered that apparently the two have been feuding over their political alliances. And, you know, what we've seen so far in the very few premieres that they've had, we haven't seen that general love and warmth between the two.
And the casting of Zegler as Snow White has also caused some racist backlash for the star herself. How has she reacted to this?
Well, she was quite fierce about this because, you know, we know the tagline Snow White is supposed to be the fairest of them all. And what Disney has done is they've casted a woman who is of Colombian and Polish descent. So your diehard Disney fans were not happy about that. But, you know, kudos to Rachel. She stood her ground and said, this is not going to be the Snow White of 1937. This is not a woman who's waiting to be saved by a prince. She's going to be quite modern day. And from what I've read so far, she's actually done a pretty good performance and she's stood her ground amid all of this controversy.
And she's got an absolutely beautiful voice. It's not come cheap either, with a budget estimated at $270 million. It's huge sums. How's it actually expected to do at the box office? Because as you mentioned, the original one that came out in 1937, I feel like we all know that. So would people want to go and see a remake, do you think?
Well, money talks in this day and age for Disney. And, you know, they did spend that amount. And so far, in previews alone, they've made $3.5 million. And that's just from yesterday. So this weekend, Leigh Ann, it's predicted that they may make $100 million worldwide for this launch. This is really low compared to other Disney remakes like Little Mermaid, which opened with $95 million alone in previews. So there's a lot riding on this film financially. But what happens with controversial films like this, curiosity always kills the cat. And I think quite a few people will, even though they don't support the message of the new film, they'll be interesting to see what happens in it.
Yes, absolutely. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? I think it's Stephanie Tecci, our entertainment reporter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Leigh Ann.
Pleasure. Let's take a look at the top business news. US President Donald Trump has invoked emergency powers to expand domestic production of critical minerals. This comes as he tries to reduce US reliance on imports from countries like China as the trade war escalates. The executive order instructs government agencies to prioritize mining projects as well as providing technical and financial support to boost critical mineral production. Staying in the US, Attorney General Pam Bondi says that 3 people accused of vandalism targeting Elon Musk's Tesla electrical vehicle company could face up to 20 years in prison. Bondi said the damage to Tesla cars, dealerships and charging stations was domestic terrorism. Arrests and charges against the 3 suspects were previously announced by prosecutors. Turning to all the sports news now, Lewis Hamilton took his first pole position for Ferrari as he headed sprint qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. Hamilton beat Red Bull's Max Verstappen around the Shanghai circuit and will start Saturday's sprint race from the front. This is actually his first sprint race pole, and he has never won any of the previous 16 sprint races. And England head coach Thomas Tuchel has dropped 3 players from Friday's World Cup qualifier against Albania at Wembley. Morgan Gibbs-White, Gerald Kinwash and Aaron Ramsdale have not been selected as UEFA rules state that a manager can only select 23 players in his first squad for the fixture. Harry Kane will be the captain of the side, while Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice are expected to start in midfield. A reminder of our top stories. Sudan's army has recaptured the presidential palace in the centre of Khartoum from the Rapid Support Forces. Flights will restart at Heathrow Airport after a major power outage forced it to shut down, delaying thousands of passengers around the world. And Disney's remake of Snow White hits movie theatres surrounded in controversy. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you so much for joining us. The dressing room is coming up next. And of course, don't miss Tom Burges Watson with GNT. Good night and happy Friday.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deep fake and artificial intelligence,
they've got to have a vote and a say.
It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
My campaign is going very well.
Presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on the Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation.
Sticking with another London derby, which gnaws me right up at the weekend because it's Fulham at home and it's traffic everywhere. Fulham 2, Spurs 0. I don't know if that's relevant to anybody listening in the Middle East or anything, but it just annoyed me because it took me an hour to get back from my son's football, you know. But Fulham secured a vital 2-0 win over Spurs, marking their second consecutive home victory over Spurs for the first time in 19 years, strengthening their bid for Europe. They've crept up there, Fulham, haven't they, Bridget?
Yeah, creeping up there.
Is that another one of your old clubs?
Another old club.
Yeah.
I played for a few. I enjoyed it there, to be fair. I liked it there. It was after my injury.
Yeah.
When I broke my leg.
Who's the manager?
Chris Coleman.
Oh, what a guy.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, good for team morale.
I've heard this. I've heard this.
But, like, players reacted well to it. He was good.
Yeah.
He was good. I remember a couple of, I don't know if it's mid-season breaks and that, but he'd made sure all the lads went out, do you know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
You know, we'd work hard, but what was good about him was it was short.
Yeah.
So we'd make sure we did the hard work, and then it was right, go and enjoy yourself, bit of team morale and stuff.
Do you know what? It's funny you say that. I remember seeing him in Cobham or at Esher early. He'd been out the night before and he was a manager of Premier League club. And I remember thinking, what are you still going out for? You're a manager now. You're in your 40s. I'm like, now I know why.
Some of the managers did, though, didn't they? Have a few drinks. I think Big Sam. Big Sam was one of them.
Oh, Big Sam loved it, didn't he?
It's sometimes good for team morale, definitely.
Yeah.
A little bit, not too much.
Right time,
these days, it ain't happening, is it? You can't do it these days with the amount of games that are being played and stuff.
I know. Well, listen, it's a great result for Fulham. It lifts them to 8th, just 4 points off of a 4th place, which is incredible. He's done a great job. Big trouble for Spurs, though, Righty, again, because you know they come through the
left out.
On
the bench, Son.
Like, you know, and just like he's like he's enjoying the stress and the strain of it. Like he had a great result on Thursday. No, you had a great result on Thursday. It looked like at White Hart Lane they were buzzing again. They're rocking and rolling, really dominant performance. And then this happens, and there's pressure on him again. What do you think?
First of all, even if he played all those players, the way Fulham are playing this season, the result could have still possibly have been the same. Because out of both teams, I would say Fulham consistently have been a better team this year. But to leave the players out that he's left at this part of the season where you're trying not to finish 15th or 16th, you want to try and at least work a little bit, finish the season on a high. I know for whatever reason it's just not working, but he's there's another manager that doesn't. He's quite stubborn in terms of the way he wants Spurs to play, which we all understand.
Yeah.
But when you haven't got Van der Ven playing, that can make those recovery runs and make those tackles with that high line.
Yeah.
In some way, you might have to tailor make that system that you want to play, especially if you're not putting pressure in the midfield, because people are just going to play the ball over the top.
Getting back to the poker theme, right? It feels like with Ange, right? He ain't going to do that. Everyone says he needs to adjust it. He's not going to do that. So he's caught in a bluff. Now, this happened to me Friday night. I've gone, right, I'm going to bluff. And even though I had my shades on, I was like, I've got to still go. I had like a 7 eye or something. So it's like that. He's like, right, I'm not, if he turns around to the lads and goes, right now, we're in the quarterfinals of the Europa League. We're gone in the league. Now let's change it. The lads will, so he has to keep playing the way. He's banking on Romero and Van der Ven staying fit and performance is gradually building. They got a tricky game against Eintracht Frankfurt in the quarterfinals. But do you think if they win the Europa League, they get Champions League football? If they don't win the Europa League, do you think he's gone, Bridgie?
Oh, I just don't know.
I don't think so.
You don't think he's gone?
You just don't know.
They'll finish 14th in the league.
I know that. I know what you're saying. I think first of all, I think Levy's made it clear in a few things that he's kind of backing him and he feels sorry for him because of all the injuries.
All the injuries and everything.
So
yeah,
I feel like they've half written off this season. They know they can't get relegated. So it seems like even the players he's left out, he's focusing on Europe.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of not washing their hands with the Premier League, but it's not priority right
now. I actually think maybe I think it'd be there next season, and it just depends how that goes.
Yeah.
That's the season.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting everyone back, everyone fit, and that's the season. I reckon if it doesn't start well,
that's serious pressure.
Then that's serious pressure. I think with everything, like it says, the injuries they've had, I think it's how they start next year.
Yeah, my thing with injuries, whenever a manager gets a massive injury crisis like that, I just can't help myself. I just think the manager has to take the responsibility. He's in control of the sports science department. Yeah. He should be. He's in control of what the lads are doing on the pitch. Usually when you have that much injury, it's usually down to fatigue, overplay, whatever you're doing with players. And I just think so.
That's one thing that's come up before is the fatigue part.
Yeah,
is his training.
Yeah,
been mentioned before that
it really
can be
quite intense,
a bit much. Yeah,
really. Well, you listen. I just think injuries, but when it's an injury crisis and it's been going on for so long, I think you're the manager. If you give manager, you got to. I guarantee there's about 100 people in that building of various jobs who at the moment know. It's Daniel Levy walked in and goes, whose fault is it that all of these are injured? And they all go pointing at each other.
Yeah.
And that's the same, because that's a shame at every football club. And, the people that miss out are the players, because no player likes to be injured.
Yeah.
And the fans, because they're missing out on these top players. So that needs to be done. But listen, I still think they can win the Europa League, as mad as it sounds. And Fulham could still get in the Champions League. But moving on quickly, I want to ask you, there was something hilarious happened in another derby up the road, where Vaclav Cherny sprayed a bunch of Celtic fans with water as he celebrated Hamza Iqbal's dramatic winning goal. Now listen, you have to put this in context, because it's the first time that the away fans have been brought into an Old Firm game for a long, long time. So it's almost like they've been punished. They've been punished, the fans, and now they've been a bit good behaviour. They can come in and watch. And then there's so much passion in a derby, and that it's brilliant. You see him just run behind Barry Ferguson, and the fans probably giving him stick, and he's just gone, the big water bottle right in the mush for the fans. They just all keep them.
That's brilliant.
I think it's brilliant.
It's great. It's brilliant. I tell you what, brave as well. Mate. It's brave. I remember being up in Scotland. We played in is it Soccer Sixes?
Yeah. Oh God,
Scottish fans, mate.
Yeah.
I know it was us and it was England, but the hatred.
I know.
I'm like, it was massive.
Yeah, that was
like Scottish fans. You have to be very careful, mate. Do you know what I mean?
That was.
Don't go out for a few weeks. I'd say stay in, be very careful.
Yeah.
Take a crew with you.
Vaclav give it a rest for a few weeks. Mate. It was brilliant banter. And listen,
I love it.
I hope. Listen, I don't mind a bit
Have you
back
ever had
and
anything
forth.
like that?
I have, but I want to quickly go back to the Star Sixes we played because 6 years ago, right?
A long time ago, yeah.
And I just retired and we played in his six-a-side tournament in the Glasgow Arena. And it was like Barry Ferguson was playing for Scotland, wasn't he? So he was the captain of Six. But right, you must have still been playing. It was.
I got invited to it.
You should have come, mate. It was brilliant. We had a great weekend.
Yeah.
Great weekend.
Yeah. We weren't the most professional team, I would say.
So it's England, Scotland, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, and the rest of the world over 3 days, a 7-a-side tournament. And so it was all staying in a hotel. So the social was great. Everyone was in the bar having a right go. And we were playing the next day. And it was all nice, like the competitive in the game. But Barry Ferguson was a Scotland captain, and they weren't taking part in the social.
Ice baths, wall downs,
they were training. They were going, they trained up to it, so they were taking it proper seriously. So like, I think at one point, at one of the dues, they left early, and I was like, what are they going home for? This party's just starting. The next day, England, Scotland in the arena. We're thinking it's all friendly, crashing into tackles. It was like. It was the atmosphere was unreal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like
we got battered as well, I think, didn't we?
We got beat, right? So we won the other 3 games, and
got beat, so we went through.
The Jocks beat us, right? Then we needed to win. So then we went. That's how when we went to a night out.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of chirpiness, right? And then you're like, right, we got to turn up now tomorrow. Bridgie,
we didn't
let's go
think that in the night though.
No.
We got to bed early, I know that.
And Bridgie, he's like, we'll be all right. So we'd gone out to like 2, 3 in the morning, right? But then the next day you woke up. We couldn't even find the whole team at one point, could we? and it was a TV show.
The night was blurry.
The night was blurry. And we ended up, we had to beat Ireland, I think, to go through to the final to knock Scotland out.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning 1-0. And it was like we just won the World Cup. We were giving it to the crowds. It's like proper pantomime, wasn't it?
But we wanted to win it so bad because we were just getting abused constantly.
Yeah, abused. Yeah.
So as much as we were going out and enjoy ourselves, we were all waking up with hangovers, but like we wanted to win so bad, didn't we? Everyone in the team, because we were just getting abused constantly.
I know.
And we ended up winning. Yeah, we went out every night.
we went out every night. We ended up winning. It was
obviously not saying the way to go forward, but once you're retired, it's not. Enjoy yourself.
I know. Yeah. But anyway, go back to what we said. Fans banter. The worst one. But you definitely played the game. I don't know if you might have played in the game. We played Everton in a semi-final of the League Cup at Goodison Park. Do you
remember that?
We won 1-0. You scored in the first leg.
Yeah.
Chelsea.
Yeah, they had Jolien on the.
Yeah. And
what year that was?
2008.
No, I don't.
No, you might. Anyway,
I was there.
So like it was a proper like Goodison Park of the night. It was like proper hectic, and they were still in the game.
Every game there is like that though.
It's a horrible place to play, which is a credit to their fans. And I've gone to take a corner, and I've gone to put the ball down, and you know that little corner there, they're on you. Hey, I can't say what they're saying, calling me everything under the sun, me, your wife, like. But then someone's down injured. I put the ball down on the spot, and I'm like, I can't move now. So this geezer's battering me. These 3 or 4 geezers battering me. And I'm just like, oh. But if you walk away, because I can't even put down injured. If you walk away, you look like you've melted a little bit. So I've got to give them back something. So I did do you remember do you remember the old Harry Enfield sketch with the Scousers? They used to do it with a big hair. They will calm down. I thought that's a gentle enough, like, for a bit of fun. I'm not being nasty. So I've gone, that really upset them. Really upset them.
Do, guys.
Calm down. I thought that's nice and fun. They got so angry, coming up, growling. I thought, oh, I'm going to walk away now. So I just pretended to do me lazy, like walk away. But like, I thought that was acceptable. I don't mind it going a bit of back and forth with the fans. I mean, this.
Yeah.
I'd have liked to spray them with water. Like
I don't mind it. I don't really give much back.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to come back and like bite me in the arse.
Yeah.
And you end up going 1-0 down. So I like to keep quiet and
I know.
until you're a goal ahead.
I know.
Then once you're 2 ahead, then you start giving them a bit back because you've got a little bit of a cushion.
I know, but it's mad. Was you? Yeah. It was you the one. The West Ham one with the bottle come through on the way in?
That was me and you in the seat.
On the bus.
Yeah.
That was Tottenham, wasn't it?
Was it?
No, it's West Ham.
Oh, I thought it was Tottenham.
Yeah, no, West Ham.
Are you sure?
I think it was West Ham.
West Ham.
All right,
West Ham.
okay.
Maybe
I'm usually wrong then. Like that 4-second keeper rule.
We were sat together, weren't we? Yeah, and I just remember
Yeah, so we were at Chelsea at the time. Was it after the game? On the way to the game?
On the way to.
On the way to the game, we're sat on the bus, and all of a sudden, smashed. The window just shattered. I think they threw a glass bottle at the bus or something, didn't they?
Yeah, God. Yeah, I remember. Wow.
I think we won that game.
Got us up for the game.
I think you set me up.
Now I know it was that game because I was going to come on to this. I was going to come on to some of your goals, and it's one that stands out for me, probably because I've played a part in it. But I remember I whipped this ball across to you, and the finish was a joke. You just opened up your foot and put it up into the top corner. Did he score that game? Did you score 2?
I scored 2 that game.
You scored 2 that game, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good.
That was
there was a few lads who was sort of. I remember
the foreign lads were like,
Bullaroos managed to sort of disappear, and he was at the front of the coach with a driver. Where's Buller? We thought someone had dragged him out the window. For a big centre half, Buller, great lad, but he didn't. Yeah, he made sure he made a sharp exit.
Gets you up for the game, stuff like that, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was wired going into that game.
Yeah.
There was no way you'd lose that game because of that. But yeah, listen, that was obviously a little bit violent. But I think the spray can and a little bit of back and forth. I think the fans actually enjoy it. Yeah. I really do. I think, and you shouldn't. Obviously,
they didn't look like they did.
No,
they might be laughing about it now.
Oh, well, I hope if they're listening to this, I hope they can see the sort of the funny side of it.
If not, give Joe some abuse on Instagram.
I understand if they're going to give it, he's got to come back.
Give you a bit back.
Yeah, I mean it's all fun and games, isn't it? Sticks and stones and all that. Yeah, I mean, so it's been an interesting weekend. We get to your old team, right? Would I be right in saying Man City, that's your team, isn't it, really? Yeah, that's your team. You come through, that's you've had some great...
It is your team.
Since about 16,
So, Man City 2, Brighton 2. Now, I watched the game back, and I thought that Brighton, how did he miss that chance at the end? Who was it at the far post? I can't remember.
Belieber missed one.
Belieber missed a great chance. But there was one where the guy, Minter, coming in at the far post, and he just didn't touch it, tap it in. I've never seen Man City for 10 years be this vulnerable, right? What's going on?
It's just a change. I think what they've done within the last 10 years is just unbelievable. Yeah. I think if you think about the 4 years where they won the trophy 4 times, the Premier League 4 times in a row as well, after you win the treble, when you win the 3rd Premier League trophy and you pick up the treble that season, nobody expected them to go on next season and win a league. You expect there to be some dip. Bearing in mind, half of them haven't rested since COVID. That's the same for all players as well.
Yeah.
So on top of playing 60-odd plus games a season, getting into the finals of everything, this year I think there was 2, because I was at the pre-season, there was 2 senior players the first 6 days or all of pre-season. All of them's missed pre-season. They haven't really been fit. Few injuries, and I just think they're just going through transition. I just think people need to understand they're human, and there are fantastic other teams in the league. Now, I thought that game that I was at, I thought in stages until they conceded that great free kick from Estupiñán. Brighton were kind of on the back foot. But Brighton, you have to respect Brighton, man. They're a brilliant team to watch. They got wicked wingers. They got players that can hurt you all over the pitch. And they, in many ways, apart from the mistakes they make themselves, they defend pretty well as well.
Saying that, all the teams, you reckon that top half, the gap's not massive, is it?
It's closed.
I think to myself, I don't know who's going to win this. Whereas before you think, no, they win this day, they win this today.
It's closed.
You know what I mean? I think it's hard to call.
Do you know what's a shame? Certainly not for Liverpool fans, but if Liverpool weren't that far ahead and all of them teams were that close.
Oh, it's anyone's.
Crumble time is, isn't it?
Yeah, Eric Crumble. It's one of his little. Okay.
You did talk about Eric Crumble before. Have we talked about Eric Crumble before on here?
No.
We need some verification. If there's any people out there,
facts.
someone sent.
Check that.
Coley, actually.
It was
So I don't-
Colton,
It's Colton.
isn't it?
A boxer called Eric Crumble that's had 31 fights and lost 31 by knockout.
Yes, correct.
And it's just tickled me. I would like to meet the geezer, but
I'm like, fair play to him. Just keep going, mate. That's
it can't be real.
I can't.
It can't be real.
Just get knocked out 31 times and keep wanting to get back in the ring.
Imagine
keep
the
wanting
first.
to, yeah, but that's persistent. It's dedication.
How does his coach lift him?
You know what I mean?
Stupidity.
Yeah, I look at it a different way, maybe. Fair play to you, mate.
Yeah, fair play. If he's real, Eric Crumble, please contact
I
us.
was up for a charity match.
Because we need that. Yeah, well, 31 defeats by knockout.
Yeah, I'd love it if he knocked Carlton out. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't like to see it. I love Carlton.
We've gone off piste a little bit.
Yeah, that usually happens.
Yeah, I know. Eric Crumble. Right. Erling Haaland has become the fastest player to 100 goals. Like, I mean, what can you say about him, right? He's just unreal, isn't he?
It's just the knack to, do you know what amazes me the most about him, Joe?
Go on.
You know, normally, like, we've all played, when you haven't got the ball, you kind of go searching. You want to be in a... He doesn't care. Like, he doesn't have the mentality to, like, say, no, I need to find my way into the game. He just waits until it's his time in many ways to shine. But he does... Obviously, no one likes to miss chances, but it doesn't knock his confidence. He just will go back and do it again and just keep going back and back. I think his mindset's phenomenal in terms of that.
Yeah, weren't he... if I remember right, his dad, obviously, Alfie Ingle, was a Premier League player, good footballer, and his mum was an athlete as well, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like she's been born to score goals. He's just incredible.
Brilliant, mate. Just the way he takes care of his body, you know, the way he talks about his diet and everything. It's like he seems really just focused.
Yeah.
I think that the point you brought up then, that a missed chance doesn't affect him. This is what you need as a footballer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you let a mistake affect you, it ruins your game.
Yeah.
It'll ruin your confidence. And you can see it in players sometimes. Confidence is a big thing in football. And I think that's why mindset is massive.
Yeah.
And it's coming back to the kids thing at the weekend that I went to watch, and you can see it. It's like, encourage each other, but also don't shout at each other when you make a mistake, because that's going to affect their confidence, especially as kids. I think if you can learn that at a young age, that it doesn't matter if you miss, you carry on and you can deal with that, mate, it'll help anyone in the football game.
Yeah, I think that's you're right, actually. Forget these physical attributes, these technical attributes. It's what's between his ears, which is
which we all probably had a bit of. Do you know what I mean? You don't get there without having that mental strength. But it's also hard being up there, maintaining that, and the abuse you might get, the stuff you might get in the press. So I think working on the mental side of it as well as the physical side is very, very important.
That's the difference.
Very important. And he's definitely got it.
Yeah. So from one striker who can't stop scoring to one who's been on a drought since December the 12th at 21 games, Rasmus Højlund. Chalk and cheese, these two lads. Talk about confidence. This lad really looked like he needed the goal, Rasmus Højlund, didn't he?
But he's got that mental strength to go on and get it.
Good.
He took it well. he took it well as well. He took it for someone with supposedly no confidence. He took the finish really, really well. But I think it's been hard for him there as well, though. Man United are in a very, very bad place, and he almost plays like an old school striker in terms of he does a lot of running away from the goal. You need to kind of channel him to run towards the goal, and I think that comes from the manager. So he'll get more chances that way, because when you've got Bruno in your team, all you have to do is run and he'll find you.
Yeah.
Little mention of Bruno, by the way. Did you see his interview?
I did. What did you make of it?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Liked the way he spoke, the respect that he had for Roy Keane. And for me, the bit that stood out was him accepting what has been said, even if he agrees with it or doesn't, but bits that he does maybe agree with, he'll work on. That's what I kind of took from that. Which I think was brilliant.
Mature, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was very mature.
Very mature.
Yeah, we know he's a brilliant footballer.
Yeah.
We all know that. Everyone's got an opinion on how he...
It was like he was accepting it, and he will grow if he thinks if it's right, he use it and grow from it, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, it was really, really impressive, you know, and I think he's listen, he'll be one of the very few people that come out of this spell with Manchester United with his head held high, and his sort of legacy
intact,
not intact, but more elevated. You know, because there's not many that are doing that for what they're doing there. But listen, I still think it's dismal for Leicester. They're 7 in a row. Manchester United, again, I think the same boat as Tottenham, where they have to win the Europa League, or I don't know what's going to happen. We talked about it last week, right? But they're building this
mad stadium.
Yeah, I don't know what to describe about it, but we'll see what's going on there. But we can't leave without getting into your fantastic career a little bit. I know we talked on Friday briefly, but Bridgie's particularly interested in doing this because he wants you to tell him how hard he was to play against. Give him his flowers.
Come on then.
Go on. Who's your hardest opponent?
No, it's always, to be fair, it's always been 2. Yeah. It's always been like for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's always been, to be fair, him.
Be more than 2.
No, but I mean in terms of a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like, as you and Ash were always like... No problem, buddy. It's always been these two because of... They always... It was a philosophy. It's always like they defended by making me tired. So when I did have the ball, I didn't have the energy all the time to go at them, and that just used to annoy me. I used to just I used to get back and do the running back with them, but instead of them saying, "All right, he's followed me," and just go back into position. Neither of them would do that.
Yeah,
he would just keep running. He would just keep running down the outside, and then you had Ash, who, when he played, he wouldn't just run. He would just run all the way across the pitch, and I'm like, well, I can't go there. I don't know how to play the offside trap well, so I weren't trying to like stay in line with the centre with the fullbacks and that. So I just kind of just said, all right, hopefully they don't get the ball this time, and then there's kind of like a space there.
He was unreal though, when he was probably one of the best left backs. You'd probably say he's up there, one of the best left backs.
Ash?
Not the best left back ever, Ash.
Yeah, I would say that.
Do you know what I thought he was so good at? Is timing and tackling.
Yeah.
Because he didn't go down, Bridgie. It was a nightmare.
Yeah. His timing of his tackling was brilliant.
Yeah.
And getting the ball, I thought.
And he hated kicking the ball long. So whenever you think you're going to get it as an attacker, he'll either drag it inside or just push it past you and run down.
Yeah,
run down
do you know, like, he brilliant. Bridgie, same. It was interesting. The players I see to give him a little bit of trouble was some like random ones, like Kevin Davis and people like that sort of...
strong.
That sort of...
strong.
You know, Marcus Bent, I think.
He was fast as well, though. He was faster than you think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they...
Yeah.
But, right, your career, when you left Manchester City to go to Chelsea, you was at the top of your game. You was one of the best players in the league. Was it a case, did you have to ask for the move, or did you want to go, or what was it?
Didn't know nothing about it.
Really?
Yeah, I just got it started with Arsenal.
Really?
It's that, like, the first thing that came up was Arsenal were very interested in signing you.
So your agent would have said to you, just a phone call, not there's been a bid, Arsenal were interested, what do you think? And what was your thoughts being a London lad, and with your dad playing there and all that?
I honestly said, I'm happy where I am, I don't want to leave.
Really?
Because when I was playing football back then, I didn't think about playing for a big club. I just enjoy...
Happy where you were.
Yeah, I just enjoy playing football. And as a naive kid, you'd think you're just going to be at one club.
I think I was like that every move. I was just happy where I was.
Yeah, like there was no intention to move or anything. And then he just carried it. He just stopped talking to me about it after I said that. And then he said, and then he just came back to me and said, the club have accepted an offer.
Really?
I was like, what do you mean? I said, I don't want to go nowhere. And he just turned around and said, well, you don't really have a choice. So, like, I was on the way to a pre-season friendly, and obviously the words got back to Stuart Pearce and that, and the boys like Paul Dickoff and Goetz and them, they'd said it's best you don't play just in case. So I didn't play. Next thing I know, the driver was outside for me to come to London, and that was it. And I remember walking at Stamford Bridge down that little aisle towards the building when I was obviously going to sign, and I'm with Dad and Mitchell Thomas.
Yeah.
And, you know, Dad's like a big kid, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's there, like, dancing around, excited. And I'm just as I am, just walking. He's like, "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you happy?" I said, "I am happy." He says, "So why does your face look like someone just stole your wallet?" And I was just like, "Dad, you're the opposite of me. I'm like quite chilled. You're bubbly. As long as you're happy." I said, "Yeah, it is what it is. I'm here, and I'm here to do the best I actually can do."
Yeah, that's incredible. People don't realise that when it comes to moves, it can be like that. You could be a lot of talking, and it just happens, and all of a sudden you're there. You're at a new club, and you're doing a medical. Yeah. Is it similar with you, Southampton, when you come to Chelsea?
Yeah, pretty much same. I was happy. And do you know, I was a Southampton boy, but it was like they were always going. They were a selling club. Yeah. So it was. Yeah. It was going to happen, and the same when it was City. Though I was happy. I mean, you know, I wasn't playing all the time because Ashley was there, but I'd still play 25, 30 games a season. But it was an opportunity to go, and he had left, and we become good friends when he come to Chelsea. So I kind of just followed him around. He's like, "Oh my God, not him again!" I know. And then I didn't have to play against him, so it's good. Just played against him every day.
Yeah, keep it sharp. Iron sharpens iron, as they say.
What's your favourite club you've been to, or your favourite time?
What's your favourite? What's your?
When do you think you're playing everything?
Yeah, when
your
do you
best.
think you're playing your best football?
I would most probably say 2004, 2005 season, which would have been just before I came to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then I would say there was a spell at Chelsea where I was playing like in that midfield area.
Yeah.
Which was
with
most
me
probably,
next
which was
that like in the hole?
on his back, yeah. Because that's where I scored the goal.
I remember you playing that position. He was on fire. Yeah, he was brilliant.
And they were, I'd most probably say the highest spells that I had. I would say,
yeah. And you scored some absolute belters. I remember the first goal for England. I was injured, so I was missing the squad. What a goal that was, right?
Against Ukraine.
Wow. Do you remember it?
Yeah. I remember it, yeah.
Because there's so many aspects of it.
Yeah.
Because the first thing I remember, I used to love Bex, by the way, because he was so like humble, bearing in mind I'm breathing down his neck to try and get in space. He always really wanted me to do well. And I remember when I was coming on for him, he said, "Look, go out there and show them what you're made of, because you deserve to have started this game, because I haven't played the way I normally play." And that kind of, without realising, that kind of just said, wow, Bex has just given me like a pat on the back, a bit more confidence for me. And when I did get the ball, I was like, it's like 15 yards in front of me. So I just carried on running, and the gap never closed until I realised I was at the edge of the box, and I was like, I'm going to have a go here and see what happens. And then it just went in.
Across the goalie, wasn't it? But best goal, or?
I always say the one at Highbury, 1-1. Dad was in the crowd that made it even better because he scored against his team. But I mean, like I think that was a team of the Invincibles where you just couldn't beat them at Highbury. And I remember coming on when I was a kid, and I was coming on to the game, and it was like 4-0 Arsenal, and Joe Rowe was bringing me on, and I'm thinking, well, what are you bringing me on the pitch for? Like, what am I going to do here? And then we went there, and we managed to come away with a 1-1. And I remember, I think Barton tackled maybe Vieira on the edge of the box, and it came to me, and I just kind of just let fly.
Yeah, I remember it. It's a sick strike. I remember. I mean, you had a great career. Is there any sort of, going back to Man City was brilliant for you as well, and you sort of started at that great, the
journey.
The journey.
Yeah.
You sort of started that. I mean, is there anything not that you regret about your career, but you could have? Do you think you could have stayed on a bit longer there? How long was you there for when you went back? 3 years?
4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I went back, I did have the option.
Right.
But it was, back then it was different. It was like a toss-up. Either leave, play more football.
Yeah.
Don't get call-ups for England, or stay.
Yeah.
And just thingy. Mancini didn't say he wanted to sell me.
Right.
I just said, like, it was kind of like, I'm getting old now. I want to play. I just want to play football. I want to enjoy the game, sort of thing. And that's what it was more of than anything.
Yeah.
Just wanted to play football again.
What did you see? Because you'd obviously come to Chelsea, won loads of trophies, and then Manchester City were now, right, we were going to be the new guys in town. What did you see from what they were doing that you knew that they were going to be top players? I think you would have seen David Silva come in, right? You would have seen Yaya's.
I've always put him up there with one of the best I've played with.
When he come in, and I remember me and Jolien when he's first there training, we was having a laugh. I think you might have been around that time.
Yeah, I was there.
And I said to me and Jolien, looked at him, like, bearing in mind I'm small as well.
Yeah.
Was like, he's only little, isn't he?
Yeah.
And Jolien was laughing because obviously that's come from my mouth.
Pot calling it.
And then like you just saw instantly within a few touches, and it was like, oh my God, he's like a magician. You can't get the ball off him.
Yeah,
right? And then that's when everyone started calling him Merlin from the Yeah, he was just scary. And then you had Tevez.
Yeah.
He was probably the worst trainer, but the best player.
Mate,
he was
just
a switch.
comes alive. And he used to run all day.
It was
He'd press.
unbelievable.
But in training, he was just so relaxed, didn't really do a lot. And then game day, he was like a pit bull, mate.
It was scary.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, just he was like a proper light switch.
Blows my mind. Yeah, because he comes to Man City after Man United. That was the big one when it's like, wow, how are they? That was what, for me, that was the pivotal moment when I from standing from the outside. I think was I still at Chelsea, or I think I'd gone, but I don't know. But I remember thinking to myself, there's a shift in power here. Man, they're buying, man, trust me, we played against Tevez and that Man United team. He was vital for that. Everyone thought Rooney and Ronaldo, what a player he was. And if they're taking him to Man City, there's a shift in power. Did it feel like that?
Yeah, you could kind of see it, especially in the games that we were playing, and it almost changed instantly. I remember Arsenal coming there, we're beating them 3-1. Remember, wherever and however Mark Hughes played us, we just seemed to get the best out of us. And against the bigger teams, we seemed to cause them all sorts of problems. And then we started beating United, and then when you got like Bellamy on the wing as well, and then you got Robinho, you got Alano, Stevie Ireland, everybody played a massive part.
He was a player, Stevie.
Yeah, everyone
Stevie
plays such a big part.
You're telling me that?
He was a player.
Yeah.
He was really... I'd probably say he didn't reach...
His full height, yeah. No,
really?
he didn't. No,
yeah, he didn't reach it. Some of the stuff he's doing, training, his vision, passing was...
And he could run
good
all day as well.
Really? Another one who, sadly, for injury, I thought was... I didn't realise how good he was what's his name, the midfielder, knee injuries. Johnson.
Oh, Michael.
Yeah. He was a player as well, but injuries killed him. He was a good player.
Right.
Injuries and maybe some other things, but he was a player as well.
Yeah.
You were there for Chelsea and see, weren't you, when they were probably at that time being really, really good. Who would you say was probably the better?
I'd honestly, can't talk about it now, but I'd mostly say Chelsea at the time. When I first signed for Chelsea, that had everything. That was like a powerhouse, and we didn't just leave it as that. We just carried on adding like your Essians, your Obis, like your Kalous, your Malouda. It just got bigger and better all the time. Whereas the only thing I would say with Cities is different is the longevity.
Yeah.
The way they've done it, it was good when it was good, but it got better and better over the 10 years, you know what I mean? And they seem to keep it going, whereas Chelsea's kind of, in many ways, run out of gas.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how Man City respond from this season.
And Chelsea.
You know, like, and
And Spurs.
Well, they're always interesting.
All right. Hey, just like to say thanks for coming along.
Pleasure,
and
man.
in for Carlton.
Anytime.
And
so just let him know.
Been a pleasure.
I was better.
Yeah.
We're calling straight after.
He'll be having a bit of pasta
Don't worry
on
about
Lake
next
Como
week,
now
mate.
with Dele Alli, just chatting about it.
Thanks, Sean, for filling in for Carlton. I'm sure we'll have you back again soon. Thanks for listening to The Dressing Room with our Arabiya News. Catch you next week.
At Al Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Al Arabiya News.
It's very impressive.
Where knowledge meets perspective.
Guatemala. Adventure awaits at Guatemala. You can dare to explore the jungles or go on a canopy tour. The rainforest perfect for thrill seekers to engage in many action-packed adventures. Guatemala is in fact known for its great outdoors. Its subtropical rainforests are protected, so people can enjoy nature-friendly activities such as hiking, biking, and horse riding. You can also hike up the Mayan pyramids. Tikal is a famous archaeological site hidden deep within the rainforest, where 70-meter or 230 feet high pyramids are seen through the canopies. It is a known UNESCO World Heritage Site that has more than 3,000 structures. And if a pyramid isn't enough for you, then you can also try hiking up an active volcano. Guatemala's Volcan Pacaya remains one of the most hiked volcanoes in the country. Molten lava slowly pours through its summit, creating huge dust and lava fields that admittedly create an impressive landscape. Also popular in Guatemala is the breathtaking Caribbean coast. You can reach it by boating along the Rio Dulce. It is a highly recommended trip as you'll get to experience a unique, isolated island feel. There, you'll arrive to hammocks and a rustic-themed beachside. Of course, you should go meet the locals. Explore the unique highlands region of western Guatemala, which is also known in Spanish as El Altiplano. Many of the modern-day indigenous Mayan groups reside there, and it's fantastic to listen to them speak in their native tongue. The locals retain the sacred rituals of their ancestors too, and you'll definitely enjoy the view of the great mountains and untouched beauty of the region's surroundings. Take a trip to the city proper. Although most tourists would rather skip the traffic-induced capital, you should still pay a visit. The place still has enticing gems yet to be discovered.
Hello, I'm Riz Khan. Welcome to the show. My guest this week is a fierce warrior who's conquered the boxing world. Oleksandr Usyk is the WBC, WBO and WBA heavyweight champion. Last year, he saw off a challenge from the intimidating Tyson Fury twice, and now feels he has just a couple of fights left before he hangs up his gloves after an undefeated professional career. Well, as a proud Ukrainian, he's carried the sporting hopes of his nation during a time of conflict and chaos. As diplomatic moves have continued to find an end to the war with Russia, Oleksandr Usyk joined me for an exclusive interview and reflected on coping with the twin challenges of life both inside and outside the ring. Oleksandr, I'm glad you could give us some time. I know you're very busy. There's a lot going on in your life. Apart from being from a country currently at war with Russia, you're obviously at the absolute top of the boxing mountain. And even Tyson Fury couldn't knock you off twice in less than a year. Now, the WBO has ordered you to begin negotiations with Joseph Parker for a mandatory title defense. What's your response to that?
Yes, our army continues to defend our country, and our guys are fighting for our freedom from the enemy. And I'm grateful to them for that. And I feel that it's impossible to express the gratitude that we all have for what our guys are doing. This is first. And secondly, WBO told us that I should defend this title. But now our aim the goal of our team is to unite our belts with Daniel Dubois.
With the possibility of Anthony Joshua getting a shot at Daniel Dubois' world title, how do you think he would do in a potential fight against Dubois, especially after him being away from the ring for a while?
There's always a chance. In the first fight, Daniel was a winner. But it's sport, boxing. If there is another fight, I'm not a great predictor. It will be interesting to see another fight between Joshua and Dubois, a revenge match.
Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois.
Well, Oleksandr, it's reported that your team is keen rather that you fight the IBF champion Daniel Dubois. So where does that possibility stand?
Ми хочемо бій Дюбуа, команда моя готова.
We want to fight Dubois. My team is ready. A lot depends on how God will give us a way to do it. And the second is the person who can do it. It's His Excellency Sheikh Turki Al-Sheikh. Because he is the person who can organize this fight. Because I think there would be obstacles otherwise. The only person who can organize is His Excellency and the riot season. You know, I always fought on the land of my opponents. At present, Saudi Arabia has created the best environment and organizes fights. So it has become like my second home. When I box in Saudi Arabia, it feels like home. Great people, great fans. We can go to look around and meet with people. Currently, we cannot host fights in Ukraine, but we can have them in Saudi Arabia. They are very kind to us, so it has become our second home.
Дуже до нас гарно ставляться, і це другий наш будинок.
But Oleksandr, you have said that you probably have maybe 2 more fights left in your career before retiring. Do you stand by that? And who would be the perfect opponents?
На даний момент я не знаю, хто це буде, але так, в мене...
At the moment, I don't know who my opponent are going to be. But yes, I have 2 fights to go in my unbelievable journey. Listen, for over 20 years, no one could organize undisputed heavyweight fight. Saudi Arabia did it. His Excellency has done it, and they can do it again. Fans want to see the fight very much, and I most want to box there.
Переважно я хочу боксувати в Саудівській Аравії.
Now, there is a lot of interest in the public in seeing boxing also being mixed with other fighting styles. And the UFC fighter, Alex Pereira, has expressed an interest in a crossover fight with you. Is that something that interests you as your final fight before retirement, maybe?
Да, мені б це було цікаво, але після...
Yes, I would be interested. But only after the fight with Daniel, to match our belts. I mean, consider the option of fighting in a cage. It's a joke, but every joke contains an element of truth.
Oleksandr, given your remarkable career, is your main ambition to remain unbeaten and unharmed, or is there something else you would like to achieve in boxing?
My main goal is to make boxing great.
Now, as you grow older, how much harder do you have to work at keeping your body at the same level of strength and stamina?
Of course, a lot of changes. My team ensures that I have everything for a good recovery and everything for me to handle challenges so that I continue to win.
There has been more awareness in recent years about the dangers of constantly receiving blows to your head in a sport such as boxing. What concerns do you have, if any, that you're at risk for such kind of head injuries or trauma?
It's important to check a boxer's health, to have a doctor on the team, a team that will continuously monitor body, head, heart, and overall condition. And the athlete also need to monitor his health very, very, very closely and constantly check his condition. Everything that happens with athletes is the consequences of the mistakes that their team make.
Це неякісний підхід команди і самого спортсмена.
You know, Alexander, there are fighters like Tyson Fury. Now he said he's retired, but many people can't stay out of it. If and when the time comes, what will you miss most about the sport once you're retired?
Я думаю, що я буду сумувати за
I think I will most miss the fights and all the hard work that I have done throughout my life. I think I'll keep training and do training camps with my team to maintain my fitness. Because in the same way you enter a big sport, you should stop in the same way. It's the same as training hard for 20 years to be a good boxer. When finishing your career, you also need training to maintain health and routine. I'll keep making boxing better and I will spend more time with my children. I'm also planning to have a small farm with chicken, a cow and some other animals. I will eat fresh eggs for breakfast and will grow berries.
яєчки на сніданок, буду вирощувати ягодки.
It's wonderful. Now, I was actually in Saudi Arabia before both of your fights with Tyson Fury. We missed the chance to speak with you at the first one when we were there, but got you now. Do you think Tyson Fury will stay retired, or do you think he might return to the ring? I mean, do you miss him? Do you stay in touch with him outside the ring?
Ні, ми не спілкуємося. Я думаю, що ми пізніше.
We don't communicate at present. Probably in the future we will. I'm sad and miss this great guy. Our interaction. We had 24 rounds. It's like a lifetime. Like you live with someone for 20 years, so it's very, very long road for both of us. It's the same with my unbelievable friend, Tyson Fury.
На тому ж рівні з моїм неймовірним другом Тайсоном Ф'юрі.
Yeah, of course. It was very well anticipated and people loved the competition you guys had. Now, what do you think of the boxing league announced by Dana White and Saudi's leading sports guy, His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh? Would you compete in Dana's new organization?
Чудова ідея, неймовірна.
Amazing. Amazing idea. I think His Excellency is doing a lot for the sport. It's wonderful that new initiatives are created, and I support it. Many people think things may not work, but it's important to do new things, always.
Завжди.
Interestingly enough, you've entered the world of Hollywood now, alongside Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for the movie The Smashing Machine. Are you looking to become the next Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe?
Ні, я не думаю, що я майбутній Арнольд Шварценеггер, ні в якому разі. Я не такий моцний, як він.
I don't think I will be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not a solid, but I practice acting. I would like to be in a movie. I see myself in dramatic role. I think I'll be able to act well.
Свого героя, якого б я грав, цікавим.
Well, before you hang up your gloves and go into the lights of the movie world full time, is there any chance you would compete in that boxing league in Saudi before retiring?
Я не проти.
I'm not against it, but I have not been invited to participate in this league. But if such a proposal comes through, my team and I will seriously consider it.
Команди, ми все це розглянемо.
I'm sure if Dana White and His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh are listening, you will get that invite. Now, just a little bit to talk about Ukraine and how the war has affected your life. How has the conflict personally affected the way you live your life and the people you care about?
Слухайте, переживання в нас вмирають.
We are very worried. My people are dying, relatives, missiles are flying over our heads. So we are very worried, and we are helping our country as much as we can. Our country wants peace, prosperity, and development. We live in a war zone, and how it's impacting us. It's very worrying for me, my close ones, and my team. It's horrible what's happening here. People see it on TV, but they still don't get the full picture of how horrible this war is. We're talking right now and the sirens are going off. That means that I must go to a shelter or a basement.
Бомбоубіжище чи в якийсь підвал. Ну, тобто прямо зараз є тривога на вулиці.
Oleksandr, we won't keep you too long, but I do want to ask you, I mean, apart from the pressure of being the world's top boxer, you also have the pressure of being a symbol of hope and resilience for your people. How do you cope with that? How do you manage that during this difficult time?
Я кажу Господу Богу кожного
I thank God every single day, many times a day. If this second, hour, year, God gives me such challenges, that means I can handle them. I say thank you to God for everything I have and everything I don't have, for everything difficult and bad. I also thank Him in my prayers and actions.
За погане, я за все йому кажу дякую. І в молитві, і в ділах.
I wonder, Oleksandr, how your experience of serving in the military changed your perspective on the war and how optimistic you are about the future of Ukraine after the war ends, especially when it comes to rebuilding.
Я дуже оптимістичний, тому що я прям впевнений, що моя країна буде процвітати. Я впевнений, що у моєї країни буде...
I'm very optimistic about the future of Ukraine. I'm sure Ukraine will prosper, it will have a strong economy, a good recovery. Our men who are defending our country and our youth wants to see growth of the country. I'm real optimist. I'm 100% sure that my country will reach a high economic level in the world.
На великому рівні економічному і в світі. Коли я вступив в ТРО...
When I entered the territorial defense forces, it was natural human reaction to be fearful. Missiles and warplanes were flying. We were all scared. But as Ukrainian, as a husband, as a father, I did not consider leaving the country and taking my family. My wife and I agreed straight away that we were not going to leave. What happens, happens. I was praying to God that He saved my family from the bullets and missiles. My team and I took arms and went to defend our country.
Oleksandr, I want to thank you for making the time, for spending the time with us. Stay safe and all the best to you.
Have a nice day. I go to work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Stay safe. A fascinating gloves-off conversation with the incredible athlete Oleksandr Usyk. I'm Riz Khan from me and the team. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
At Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Arabiya News. I'm Tom Burges Watson, and in today's special programme, we take a look back at some of the best interviews during the last couple of days. Hello and welcome to the programme. At least 400 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, which struck during the early hours of this morning. According to health officials in the Palestinian enclave, more than 600 people were also injured. Well, this was the biggest wave of attacks since the 19th of January ceasefire took effect. And Israel says these extensive strikes across Gaza were the result of the repeated refusal by Hamas of a proposed extension of the ceasefire agreement and the release of hostages. Well, Hamas says that 4 of its senior officials were killed in this wave of attacks, which have sparked a strong global reaction. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry says it denounces Israel resuming strikes on Gaza, quote, in the strongest terms. Meanwhile, France also condemned the strikes, and the country's foreign minister called for an immediate halt to the violence. Well, the administration of President Donald Trump was consulted on Monday by Israel regarding those deadly strikes in Gaza. The White House says that Hamas chose war by refusing to release hostages. Well, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, told Fox News that President Trump had made it clear to Hamas that, quote, all hell risked breaking loose.
The Trump administration and the White House were consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza tonight. And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America, will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose.
Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Rosalia Bollen, who is a UNICEF official who joins us from the south of Gaza. Rosalia, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Just tell us, first of all, where you are and what the situation is on the ground around you.
I'm in the UNICEF guest house in Al-Mawasi, Rafah. It's a beachy area in the southern tip of the Gaza Strip. This is the area where lots of people had fled to throughout the war. With the start of the ceasefire, some families have returned to their homes, but others have stayed. So there's still a sizable population right around the guest house in this area.
Just tell us what happened overnight. Huge airstrikes were carried out. Just tell us what you saw and heard.
So at about 2:10 this morning, my colleagues and I were abruptly woken up by the sound of very, very loud explosions, very heavy bombardments, including in the vicinity of our guest house. And that continued for about 15 minutes, just relentless bombs. As an impact, I could see the sky lighting up. After those first 15 minutes or so, towards 2:30 a.m., the bombing subsided somewhat, and that's where I could start hear people scream outside. I heard people yelling right outside the guest house. I heard ambulances starting to arrive, the sirens of ambulances, and the sound of drones and airplanes flying over. That continues up to right now. There's just this constant rumbling of planes and the buzzing of drones. And throughout the day, I've heard occasionally explosions more in the distance. We've seen an important inflow of severely injured people into hospitals. Hospitals are overwhelmed. They're trying to cope with this inflow. Healthcare has been decimated throughout the first 15 months of war. And the hospitals that I've been visiting over the past couple of days, or before the bombardments, they've been facing some shortages. For instance, in Al-Aqsa Hospital, where I was just a few days ago, in the neonatal unit, nurses told me they've ran out of antibiotics. So it's in these conditions that they are receiving injured people.
Okay, I mean, it sounds extremely frightening what you've been through, and it sounds like, as you say, hospitals were already struggling before this happened. I mean, just going back to, what happened as the bombardment began. I mean, what went through your mind at 2 o'clock this morning? What were you thinking, and did you feel like you yourself might be in danger?
Yeah, it's been terrifying. It's been really tough, and when you hear those planes approaching, you're just on edge, because you know a bomb is going to be dropped. You don't know where it's going to land. You don't know when it will impact. So you're just sort of frozen for a couple of seconds as you wait for the impact for the bomb to hit. During the war, we've been saying that no place in Gaza is safe, and we're back at that now because we know that bombs have been hitting tents and shelters, including schools turned into shelters. There's dozens and dozens of children who have been killed, and that is an absolutely terrifying thought for me and my colleagues too.
Yeah, I mean, the ceasefire has been in place for almost exactly 2 months now. I'm just wondering, what are people saying to you there? Do people say it's now collapsed or it's about to collapse?
You know, I think fear has been hanging in the air for weeks now. We made a really good start with the humanitarian community during the first 6 weeks of the ceasefire, when we were finally allowed to fully operate, to pick up cargo from the crossing and to distribute life-saving supplies to families in need throughout Gaza. And the aid that we were able to pick up has been reaching children, has been reaching families. Because the needs are very, very high, we haven't had the luxury to pre-position aid in our warehouses and to build up a considerable stock of supplies. We've tried to push out as much aid as we could. We have some supplies left in our warehouses, but we do need the crossings to reopen to avoid those supplies from being depleted. But with the start of this blockade on aid supplies, on fuel, on cooking gas, fear has rapidly spread. As I've been engaging with parents and children throughout Gaza, I've had children asking me what I thought would happen next. There's parents asking me whether the war would resume. Parents have asked my opinion. What is it that I would do in their place? They have fled from Jabalia. They're here in Al-Mawasi. The thing they would love most is to return to their homes in Jabalia. But what if the war resumes? What if airstrikes intensify? Sure. So fear has been omnipresent, and it's heartbreaking that this nightmare scenario is now materializing.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, Rosalia, when people ask you questions like that, you know, what should we do? Is this the end of the ceasefire, and has the war begun again? I mean, what sort of things are you saying to these people?
And over the past couple of days, I've mostly engaged with children who were asking me those questions. It's extremely difficult. It's very awkward. You want to give an honest answer. The honest answer is that I don't know what is going to happen. I didn't know a couple of days ago that this would happen, although I've been quite fearful. I've told children to listen to their parents and to stay closely with their parents. As of today, UNICEF has been calling for an immediate restoration of the ceasefire, and I can only fondly hope that those calls will be heeded.
Just tell us a little bit about what UNICEF's activities on the ground there in Gaza have been and are today, despite what I'd imagine is a good deal of chaos all around you.
Yeah, our activities haven't halted, despite the near impossible conditions. These are really frustrating conditions to work in, and it's frustrating that the gains that we achieved at the beginning of the ceasefire are being so rapidly erased. But UNICEF has all sorts of programming in support of the provision of essential services. So, for instance, mental health activities organized for children, informal education in temporary learning centers, routine immunization, cash assistance programming. The most vulnerable families inside Gaza receive digital cash assistance from UNICEF in an e-wallet, and that assistance continues.
And I just want to pick up on what you were saying a little earlier about the situation faced by medical staff there in Gaza. I mean, we're hearing from the Red Crescent that hospitals are currently completely overwhelmed. I mean, as you said, there's been 15 months of bombardment. 400 people have been killed, more than 400 people have been killed in the last 24 hours, more than that number injured. How can hospitals there in Gaza do anything to help the injured, given that they had such inadequate resources before these events even happen?
They have to improvise. They have to make do with the means that they have. Thankfully, during the ceasefire, we have been able to bring some supplies in, including UNICEF. We have been bringing health supplies in, medical disposables, obstetric kits to help deliver babies, specialized equipment for neonatal units, for instance, warmed lamps, patient monitors for neonatal intensive care units. But so much more is needed. And what is really frustrating is that we have those supplies, including health supplies, ready to be moved in if only we were allowed to bring them in. For instance, UNICEF has 20 ventilators. Those are machines to help preterm babies breathe. The lungs of preterm babies who are born too early, aren't fully developed yet, and they need support to breathe. So those machines are ready right outside of Gaza, but we're unable to get them and to bring them in and to bring them to hospitals.
Just lastly, before we let you go, I mean, life was extremely challenging, as we were saying before this latest bombardment. I'm assuming morale is extremely low, even lower than it probably was yesterday. It was probably low yesterday. How would you describe the overall mood and feeling around you there in Gaza, Rosalia?
It's just heartbreaking to see and to speak with people. Families feel abandoned by the world. They feel abandoned by the international community. They've been through so much. They're worn out physically. They're worn out mentally. And now this resumes at a brutal pace, at a very high scale, with reportedly hundreds and hundreds of people killed. So the hope that families had, and especially that children had, is being shattered, and that is just horrific.
Okay, well, we wish you and your colleagues at UNICEF all the very best, and thank you very much for sparing the time to speak to us. Rosalia Bollen, thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get some more analysis so we can cross to Birmingham in the United Kingdom and speak to Professor Kamel Hawash, a Palestinian academic and political analyst. Professor Hawash, great to have you with us once again. Let me just start by asking you, first of all, a very basic question. What's your reaction to what's been happening in the Gaza Strip these last 20 hours or so?
Well, I woke up during the night at around 4 o'clock, and I checked my phone, and I saw the horrendous reports from Gaza of more than 350 people at that time being killed, and the number is escalating. This is horrendous barbarism by Israel. From the Palestinians feeling there's a ceasefire, it just went on and killed over 450 people. It claims it is targeting Hamas. Let them tell us if they have killed 450 Hamas members, or if not, how many civilian children and women they have killed. It's the most appalling thing we can have, when Israel should have been adhering to an agreement it signed, a ceasefire agreement that should have been transitioning from one phase to another, leading to an end to the war and to the rebuilding of Gaza.
Professor, I'm going to put the same question to someone from the Israeli side in just a moment, but I want to get your opinion as well. I mean, why has the ceasefire deal sort of fallen by the wayside? I mean, there was supposed to be a very clear phase one, a very clear phase two. What happened to that transition, and why are we in this limbo phase of this extension, or these demands for extensions of phase one? Why not simply phase two?
Because Israel doesn't want to end this war, this aggression on the Palestinians. If we do go through the three phases, there will be an end to the war. Israel would have to withdraw from every inch of Gaza, but Netanyahu doesn't want to, and he's relying on the change of leader in the White House, because this particular ceasefire agreement was negotiated under Biden. Trump seems to have given him the all okay to do whatever he wants. So he has started to the phase of, again, increasing the war, when in fact hostages were being released in accordance with the agreement, X number of Palestinian hostages. But Netanyahu is not satisfied. He wants to get more and more, and he thinks that by attacking what he calls Hamas targets, that this will put pressure on Hamas to concede more in this renegotiation. What should have happened is that Steve Witkoff, the envoy from Trump, should have said to Israel and Hamas, you stick to the agreement. Hamas has stuck to every aspect of the agreement. It is Netanyahu who has breached this, because what he really wants is to get the hostages out and then complete the demolition of Gaza, leading to the possible expulsion of the Palestinian people, and he will fail.
I'm just wondering what's actually left of Hamas, as far as you can understand, because we've spoken to some analysts who've told us that the threat posed by Hamas has now been almost entirely neutralized. There is no longer a significant threat posed by Hamas. What's your understanding? What's left of them?
It is what I hear in the media, reports like that. But I also hear reports that they've regrouped, that they have more people volunteering to train to be part of their operation, because people have been devastated by the Israeli aggression, and some of them want to be part of the resistance to the Israeli occupation and aggression against them. Nobody can call what the Palestinians have been doing since the 8th of October terrorism. It is sheer resistance to an occupier who has destroyed nearly 80% of Gaza, and I think Netanyahu wants to destroy the remaining 20% and then drive people out, and then say to his friend in the White House and his son-in-law, Kushner, here is the land you can turn it into a Riviera of the East. It's the most horrendous policy, but we are led by fascist extremists or Israelis who do not want to see peace with the Palestinians, do not want to see a Palestinian entity come into being, but instead they want to ethnically cleanse all the Palestinians to neighboring countries. Now, those countries are not taking them, not because they hate Palestinians, but because they believe that their rightful place is their homeland in every inch of Palestine, whether they live in Haifa or whether they live in Nablus.
So when President Trump says Hamas chose war and brought this upon itself by not releasing the hostages as he demanded, saying that all hell would break loose if they didn't, they were warned. They haven't done that. How do you respond?
I go back to the agreement. What was the point in signing a ceasefire agreement in 3 phases? It was clear that hostages would be released in the first phase. Then there would be negotiations on the second phase where more hostages would be released. That is what the families of the hostages welcomed, as it happens, the Israeli hostages, and indeed those Palestinians who would also be released. And then we get to the third stage when there would be a complete withdrawal from Gaza, a reconstruction, and the Palestinians could look to living a normal life, or as near a normal life as possible. But we are looking at sadists who run Gaza, who have attacked children in the middle of Ramadan, who have stopped any supplies in terms of milk for babies. Really, there are 40,000 women who are pregnant in Gaza. They need care, they need feeding. But Netanyahu is determined to hit the demography by killing children and women so that he can reduce the number of Palestinians who live on that land into the future. Think of it that way. If 20,000 children have been killed, that means 10,000 families potentially have not occurred. If they had 5 children each, that would be 50,000 additional Palestinians. He wants that not to happen, as does his fascist accomplices in this so-called democratic state.
I mean, we've heard condemnation come from far and wide with regards to these latest aerial attacks on Gaza. It's come from Egypt, it's come from Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the European Union. Beyond words, what do you think we could expect to see from regional powers with regards to what's been happening in the Palestinian territories?
Yes, one would hope that the Arab countries certainly would cut any diplomatic relations with Israel, and I'll explain why. Certainly the agreement that was signed that brought the United Arab Emirates and Israel together, at the time, Israel promised there would be no annexation of the West Bank. but it is annexing the West Bank. And I hope that our brothers and sisters in the United Arab Emirates will rethink this relationship, because it isn't what they signed for. Did they sign really for a complete annihilation of the Palestinian people, which is what Israel is doing now? And I don't want to pick the United Arab Emirates on its own, because they mean well. But it is the same with all the other Arab countries and the Muslim countries. They shouldn't be a representative of Israel in any Arab or Muslim nation, not because they hate Jews, but because they disagree completely and abhor what Israel is doing. You can't talk to people who are killing children, as they are now, slaughtering children, and who have made it very clear they want Palestinians to be ethnically cleansed. No one, including the British government, I don't just talk about the Arab governments. How is it that the human rights lawyer Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister in the UK, who once said Israel had the right to cut off water and electricity, well, they've done it again, but he has done nothing. And he should suspend any aid in terms of military aid or arms sales to Israel, and he should not be supplying any intelligence to Israel, which it is using to kill Palestinians.
Just lastly, I mean, we were hearing from a UNICEF spokesperson before we crossed to you. She said nowhere is safe in Gaza, and yet we understand Israel has issued some evacuation orders in Gaza. Not sure where people are supposed to go. What's your understanding from talking to people on the ground of exactly what the reality of the situation on the ground in Gaza actually is?
They realize that nowhere in Gaza is safe. A lot of them returned, for example, to northern Gaza. We saw those amazing pictures of this attachment to the land, of people going back to the north and building or assembling tents and so on near their homes or on their land, because they are that connected to the land, unlike the Israeli settlers who have vacated the settlements but won't go back. The Palestinians are attached to this land, and they will not stop being attached to this land. And remember that as part of the ceasefire agreement, 60,000 mobile home units should have been entered into Gaza. But Israel doesn't want that, because it wants to move the Palestinians south and then push them as hard as possible to leave what they would call voluntarily, when in fact they've given them no choice if they are to survive with their families.
Okay, well, thank you very much, as ever, for your time. Professor Kamel Hawash, always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office says that these deadly airstrikes are the result of a lack of cooperation from Hamas. While speaking at a press conference in Jerusalem today, an Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson said that Hamas should have accepted all of Israel's proposals that were brought to the table by the United States. Well, Israel is demanding that Hamas release all the hostages.
Hamas rejected 2 concrete mediation proposals presented by the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Israel agreed to these mediation proposals. Hamas refused them.
So what do Israeli citizens make of these developments? Well, let's take a listen to what people on the streets of Jerusalem had to say.
Israel army give them to the Palestinians few weeks to release all the hostages. So they took like 20 days, almost 20 days, and nothing moving.
My feeling was not good. I don't like war, like every normal people. It was enough for me and for all citizens from Sderot once on the 7th of October.
I think this is just another phase of trying to put pressure. Thankfully, this time with the support of the United States, it appears.
Well, let's get more analysis. We can speak now to Yaakov Amidror, retired Israeli Major General and former National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who joins us now from Tel Aviv. Great to have you with us again here on Al Arabiya News. The Israeli Prime Minister instructed his army to take, quote, strong action against Hamas. What is Israel seeking to achieve at this particular moment?
We are negotiating with the Hamas in the last few months. They were not ready to release any hostages. And at the same time, they are enhancing their military capability, preparing for the war. And it is unacceptable situation in which they are preparing for the new war, and we are doing nothing because we are negotiating the release of the hostages. So we decided that it will be clear for Hamas that there is a price. If they don't release the hostages, Israel is ready to resume the war, and the price is will be clear for them, and then maybe they will be ready to negotiate. Up till now, they said no to every offer of the Americans and the mediators. So it is a situation that cannot be continued.
But what's happened, therefore, to the ceasefire deal that was agreed on the 19th of January, signed on the 19th of January? I mean, there was a time frame stipulated in that ceasefire agreement. Why isn't it being adhered to?
The time was finished. It's the end of stage one, and the Americans put on the table twice offer to extend the ceasefire with the release of some hostages parallel to that. Hamas didn't agree, and this is the result, that Hamas is negative about extending the ceasefire. And if they are not ready to extend the ceasefire, it's the end of the ceasefire.
But lots of countries, like Egypt, for example, are saying this is a blatant violation of the ceasefire. So it still isn't clear. I mean, who's broken the ceasefire agreement?
The ceasefire agreement was finished. The agreement was up till a point in which we got our hostages, the hostages that, according to the agreement, supposed to be transferred to Israel. That was ended, and we wanted to extend the ceasefire for getting more hostages. They were not ready to release the hostages, and through the time that we are negotiating, they use it to enhance their military capabilities. And we understood that it is an absurd situation in which we are negotiating, and they are continuing to build their military capabilities. So we decided that they cannot hold the stick in both sides. Either it is a war or it is release of hostages. Not release of hostages and a ceasefire. This is a situation that cannot be continued.
But didn't Israel agree to a phased deal, and therefore phase one was supposed to lead to phase two? Phase one wasn't supposed to be extended, so why didn't you go into phase two?
Because we didn't agree about the terms of the phase two. They had some dreams what the phase two will be. That was not agreed, and if there's no agreement about phase two, it's the end of phase one, and it's the end of the ceasefire. We were ready to extend the ceasefire, but for that we wanted to release some of the hostages so that we will have more time to negotiate. They didn't want to agree to that, and this is the result. Yes, we had an agreement about stage two, but stage two was not determined what are the terms, and we had to negotiate it. In the negotiations, we didn't succeed to come to a common ground. So there are two options: either to resume the war or to extend the ceasefire. They wanted to extend the ceasefire without releasing hostages. That cannot be accepted.
Okay, so 400 people have been killed, we understand, in the Gaza Strip in the last 20 hours or so, 600 or so injured. I mean, we were just speaking to someone from UNICEF there, I mean, describing, horrific humanitarian situation right across the Gaza Strip. It was horrific before yesterday, it's now even worse. And with regards to getting back the hostages, we understand there are, 58, 59, it's not quite clear how many hostages are still being held. It's believed more than 20, however, are still alive. There's huge domestic pressure in Israel for them to be returned alive and get home safely. But with these kinds of attack overnight, aren't they in greater danger?
Maybe they're in greater danger, in spite of the fact that we are doing everything not to attack in the areas in which the Hamas is holding the hostages. But you have to ask yourself all the time, what is the alternative? if the alternative is not getting anyone and at the same time to have a ceasefire in which Hamas is becoming stronger, it's a stupid situation that cannot be accepted.
I mean, clearly restarting the war wouldn't be good news for the hostages, would it?
Depends what will be the reaction of Hamas. If Hamas understands that we are going to eliminate it, it might compromise. I don't know. Up till now, with the ceasefire, it didn't work. That is clear.
So, I mean, typically in the past, when these sorts of operations have been carried out, there's been some form of retaliation. I mean, do you think Israel is expecting retaliation, and what form might it take? I mean, could it come from someone apart from Hamas? Or could it come from, for example, the Houthis in Yemen? What sort of scenarios do you envisage?
I think that the situation is totally different. In the past, we asked ourselves what would be the retaliation from Gaza. But the capabilities of Hamas today in Gaza are such that they are not relevant as a threat to Israel inside Israel. They are very relevant to anyone who want to come into and to live in the Gaza Strip and to walk in the Gaza Strip and to act in the Gaza Strip. But they are not relevant as a threat to Israel. They lost their ability to launch missiles, big number of missiles to Israel, or to make a ground raid like they did in the 7th of October, that they don't have in their capacity after the long war that we did in Gaza. In the past, we asked ourselves, okay, what will be the reaction from Lebanon? What Hezbollah will do? Hezbollah got a huge blow and now is fighting for his survival, not about how to retaliate into Israel. And the Houthis are now confronting the Americans, or the Americans confronting the Houthis, and I don't see the Houthis have the capabilities today and tomorrow when they are confronting the Americans to launch missiles into Israel. So the situation now is different than the one in which we had been a year and a half ago. Now Hamas is almost irrelevant as a threat to Israel. Islamic Jihad is not relevant. Hezbollah is fighting for its survival, not to attack Israel. Iran is very careful after the exchange of fire between Israel and Iran. The Iranians understand their vulnerability. And the Houthis are very much occupied by the tension to the American attack now. So for the strategic situation of Israel is much, much better.
Okay, I mean, there'll be people watching who'll be wondering if you say the threat posed by Hamas is irrelevant and there isn't a threat. They'll have difficulty understanding the rationale behind last night's attack that killed, 400 people, many of them women and children, and injuring 600 others when they got very limited access to medical care, as everyone knows. But just to wrap up, I mean, if mediators...
A minute, what you said. We attacked and we killed terrorists. If the terrorists live with civilians, some of the civilians will be killed. But
in a densely populated area like Gaza, I mean...
A minute, let me answer. All our targets are targets which had been based on very good intelligence as terrorist targets. If the terrorists are living with civilians, no question that the civilians will suffer. But that you have to ask and to blame the terrorists, why they are fighting for within civilian people.
Well, I mean, there are 2 million people, as we all know, living in a very, very small area, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. So impossible to carry out large-scale attacks without killing civilians. Just to wrap up, though, I mean, if mediators have struggled as much as they seem to have done to secure a ceasefire deal, a truce, I mean, when we want to start talking about a longer-term solution from Gaza, if they can't even get a truce organized that's actually going to work, I mean, long-term peace, I mean, that's a very long way off, isn't it?
No, we don't intend to have a peace with Hamas. Hamas should be eliminated. As a terror organization, after what they did in the 7th of October, we are not looking for any peace agreement with Hamas. Hamas is not a partner for peace, not a peace agreement and not peace negotiations. It's about releasing the hostages and to rebuild Gaza without Hamas. Hamas is not a partner for a peace.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Yaakov
You are most welcome.
retired Israeli Major General. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have spoken by telephone. This as pressure mounts on Russia to accept a ceasefire deal to end the war in Ukraine. Well, speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One at the weekend, President Trump made the first mention that he'll be speaking with President Putin, stating that land and power plants would be part of the conversation. He described it as, quote, dividing up certain assets between Russia and Ukraine.
We'll, be talking about land. It's a lot of land. It's a lot different than it was before the war, as you know. And we'll be talking about land. We'll be talking about power plants. Because that's up, that's a big question. But I think we have a lot of it already discussed very much by both sides.
You'll ask him.
Ukraine and Russia.
You'll ask him.
We're already talking about that. Dividing up certain assets. Yeah, and they've been working on that.
President Trump speaking there aboard Air Force One. Well, let's get more now, and we can speak to Carla Sands, former US ambassador to Denmark, Greenland and the Faroe Islands under President Trump. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again here on Al Arabiya, Ambassador Sands. Great to have you with us. What can a telephone call achieve? Can it create the necessary pathway to ending that war in Ukraine, do you think?
Well, I think it's certainly the first great step, right, Tom? There were no telephone calls in the prior administration. I don't think Joe Biden spoke with Vladimir Putin the entire time that the war went on. And that's a tragedy because people are dying. President Trump wants to end the war and stop the killing. I think the globe can be really pleased about this first step, and certainly talking is the first step.
Again, in terms of concessions extracted from the Russian side, I mean, what realistically can we expect President Trump to obtain? Because he's got to obtain something, hasn't he?
He does. So I don't think either side is going to go away entirely happy. I think that both are going to give up some of the things on their wish list. I'm sure both have a few non-negotiables. But the fact that they're talking in this granular way so quickly is really encouraging. I think they both want to be done with the war. Well, I know Zelensky has personally and some of his inner circle profited from this war. I think he said he's misplaced around $100 billion that he says it's mysterious. He doesn't have it. He can't account for it, of the money that the U.S. government, U.S. citizens, because it's tax dollars, sent to him. So that's discouraging, and hopefully we can get some of that back to help with the DOGE effort of reducing corruption in the United States and helping our country. But I'm encouraged that Zelensky and Putin are now both in discussion with the U.S. government. And I'm thrilled that they were able to make progress even in Saudi Arabia not long ago. So this is a wonderful, hopeful first step. And now we just have to see, how do they complete this process?
Yeah, because it's not without political risks for President Trump, is it? I mean, this is risky business because supposing, that call and future efforts yield zero results. I mean, that's not a great outcome for President Trump, is it?
Well, I think having the dialogue is the first great step. So that is in itself an achievement, since it hasn't happened in 3.5 years. So let's just reflect on that positive step. And there may be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know. Zelensky already retreated 3 times on signing a minerals deal with the U.S. And now I think he came out a few days ago and said, oh, by the way, I want X. He wanted some other guarantees. So I don't know if he's a reliable partner. I hope that he is, and that we can get the deal done between Putin and Zelensky. But it's been Zelensky that's been, in fact, I think President Trump even said, look, the hardest actor in this bringing this together to a head has actually been the Ukraine piece. So, and that was disappointing to hear. But I think there's no way that this war actually ends in a victory for Ukraine. They don't have a pathway to win the war. And I think both countries are war weary and it's time to put an end to this. It should never have begun and wouldn't have if President Trump had been in the White House.
Well, let's see if he can stop it. But it did happen, and Ukraine obviously didn't invade itself. And, you know, the Ukrainian president represents a country that has lost tens of thousands of soldiers on the battlefield defending its territory, which is probably what any country would have done. Ahead of that call, we heard President Putin hitting out at the Western sanctions on Russia. Only a matter of half an hour or so before the call was due to begin, President Putin was berating those sanctions. I mean, that suggests they're working, they're having the desired effect. And that presumably gives President Trump quite a strong lever, doesn't it?
It does. I think it's going to be a combination of carrots and sticks on both sides. That's my suspicion. I only speak in my personal capacity, but regarding the war itself and the fact that it happened, let's not forget that Vladimir Putin told the West over and over, more than 10 years ago, he began to say, do not presume that you're going to enter Ukraine into NATO. Stop it. It's a red line. And so there were talks going on from both sides of the aisle in the U.S. with Ukraine, and to move them forward, and that was a red line for Vladimir Putin. He said it was, and then he followed through. So perhaps we should also pay attention to what world leaders say when they give us warnings that are, red lines for them, and that's maybe time to have that discussion, and not after hundreds of thousands of the treasure of both countries have been killed.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you in just a moment about, whether you think NATO will one day include Ukraine. But before that, I just want to pick up on something you were mentioning there about carrots and sticks, because that's exactly the language used by Bradley Bowman, who is a senior director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He said this: the US has been consistently offering in some form preemptive concessions. He's talking about President Trump here, that have been weakening the American and Ukrainian negotiating position. I think, he says, there's a real danger here that the administration's approach is boiling down to sticks for Ukraine and carrots for Putin. So using your carrots and sticks analogy, what do you have to say to that line of argument?
Well, I'm not in the room where they're having that call, but I'm sure there are carrots and sticks. And it's going to be on both sides. I think that people are really, perhaps remembering the ginned up Russia hoax of almost 8 years ago, that was ginned up by the Hillary Clinton campaign, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and their intelligence team in the Oval Office, and that targeted President Trump when he was a private citizen and then while he was president in his first term. So, let's put that aside. Let's hope and pray that President Trump and the two sides do come to a good deal, that the killing stops. That's the number one thing. And understanding that neither side is going to get everything that they want. And that's how it is in a negotiated settlement.
Okay, going back to my earlier question, so negotiations obviously underway, both sides setting out their red lines. I mean, President Trump made it sound long before today's phone call that NATO membership for Ukraine was really unlikely to happen. I mean, do you think it could happen perhaps eventually at a later stage? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think in my lifetime that Ukraine will be part of NATO, but 100 years from now, I have no idea. But certainly not in the near future.
Okay, I mean, one of the priorities from the Trump administration, I mean, really, since before President Trump even took office for the second time, right along the campaign trail, ending the conflict quickly was this top priority. But, I mean, surely it's about the terms and conditions for ending it, not just ending it for the sake of ending it, but ending it in a way that it's actually going to stay ended. It's going to have a lasting conclusion. And that's something that the Europeans obviously want to see happen. And they've given as much to this war effort financially as the Americans have. I mean, they've got a point.
I don't believe that's correct. We've given a lot more than $100 million more than the Europeans.
The Europeans are given about 52%. America's given about 48%, according to the sources I've seen. So it's a little bit more.
The European money, actually, the European money is a loan. The U.S. money has been given, and we are also supporting the Ukrainian pensions, paying the government salaries, paying for junkets, for fashion shows. The spending. The U.S. is not just funding the war. We are funding Ukraine's lifestyle, and it has to stop.
Well, it is a country at war, and as I said, they didn't ask to be invaded by Russia. When it comes to divvying up the assets, as President Trump put it on Air Force One, I mean, Ukraine's presumably part of that conversation as well, isn't it, given it's their sovereignty, their assets?
Yeah, yes, of course. But let's not forget that this war didn't have to happen, that there was a negotiated settlement in early 2022, and Joe Biden and Boris Johnson basically put the kibosh on that settlement, and that was agreed on between Zelensky and Putin. So, this war did not have to happen. It wasn't just, we had a weak president in the White House, but there was a negotiated settlement. The war powers in the world wanted this war, unfortunately. And so this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy on both sides that people have died. I'm just glad that it's coming to a conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, today happens to be the 11th anniversary of the annexation of Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula by Russia. I mean, this goes back a lot longer than just a couple of years ago when this particular war started. I mean, surely the annexation of Crimea by Russia wasn't also Ukraine's fault, and it wasn't President Biden's fault because he wasn't president at the time.
That's right. It was another weak U.S. President Barack Obama, when Vladimir Putin invaded the Crimea. And then he built a giant bridge, and then he drove a truck over it just to show ownership. Yes, he did annex Crimea.
I mean, it does feel like President Zelensky is getting a lot of the blame from the Trump administration. I mean, and for unnecessarily, they say, prolonging the war. I mean, he's simply defending his country, isn't he? I mean, you have to hand it to him.
Yeah, I really don't want to get into my personal thoughts about Zelensky as a leader. I'm sorry. I mean, what he did in the White House, in the Oval Office, about 2 weeks ago, was so appalling. His behavior. I'll just share with you. If I was receiving money from, say, my banker at my bank, and I go in to get a loan from my banker, and my banker says, XYZ to me, I would be like, okay, thank you very much. Okay, can I have the loan? Yes, you can. Okay, thank you. And I would shake my banker's hand, and I'd be appreciative, and I wouldn't be arguing. I wouldn't be interrupting. I wouldn't be saying, oh, well, I want you to throw in this and that along with my loan. The display that Zelensky put on in the Oval Office, in my opinion, was really appalling.
One voice we've heard from here at Al Arabiya in the last 24 hours has been that of John Bolton, former National Security Advisor. I don't know what you think of him, but he was asked by my colleague, can President Putin manipulate President Trump? And his reply was, I think that's very likely to happen. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't want to speak ill of John Bolton. We worked together when he was the NSA in the Trump White House. We worked on important issues for American security. And I think that's about all I can say about John Bolton.
Okay, fair enough. What happens if no deal can be reached? Where does that leave the Trump administration? What are its next steps?
Well, I think the next steps will be largely up to Zelensky and Putin, because I don't believe the U.S. taxpayers are willing to continue to fund this war. And so perhaps Europe will step in. I don't know that. They've been talking, but don't seem to have a credible plan that they've been able to put together. They seem to want to do something, but not able to come to a consensus. And it's very hard for them to operate without U.S. military involvement because their capabilities simply have not developed in the the years since Barack Obama in 2014 said we need you to put 2% toward your defense, and we need you to have a credible, capable defense, well funded with trained military fighters, and they still have a way to go, unfortunately, to meet the NATO requirements. They all get a report card. Every country gets a report card from NATO that's in the alliance, and many of them are failing. They're just not delivering what is needed to be delivered.
Just lastly, I'm being told we're nearly out of time, but I just wanted to ask you this. I mean, President Trump spoke quite often about President Putin on the campaign trail, spoke of his relationship with President Putin. I mean, how would you characterize that relationship, Ambassador?
Well, I would like to think that President Trump can pick up the phone and call any world leader. I think that's the goal. I think that, in fact, should be the goal for every world leader, that we have a dialogue with the peers so that if there is something happening, there's communication. It's the first step toward resolving a dispute. And I think that with communication, you can attempt to have a diplomatic resolution rather than having kinetic war, which is something that I think most of us just don't want to see in our countries. Most people watching your show want peace in their country, and they want prosperity, and they want to be able to pass on a good life to their kids. And war interrupts all of that. And it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. President Trump is not part of that military industrial complex. He wants to spend money to have a credible defense. He wants to exercise and be ready for conflict to prevent conflict. You have to prepare for war to prevent war. Weak nations are vulnerable and invite conflict, invite war. So we have to be strong. And President Trump is strong, and he will have a good relationship, a working relationship with every world leader at some point during his presidency. I truly believe that.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to speak to us, former U.S.
It's a pleasure, Tom. Thanks.
Carla Sands, thanks again for your time. We begin with the latest on last night's lengthy telephone conversation between the US President Donald Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, during which a number of agreements were reached. Well, President Putin agreed to temporarily halt attacks on Ukrainian energy facilities. He approved a prisoner exchange and agreed to engage in talks about security in the Black Sea. However, the Russian leader declined to endorse a full 30-day ceasefire, which President Trump had hoped would serve as the first step towards a more lasting peace deal. Well, despite that, President Trump, who has had a complicated relationship with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, spoke positively about his call with his Russian opposite number.
We had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things and toward getting it to peace, and we talked about other things also.
President Trump there. Well, when asked if President Putin had demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine, the US president responded that the issue hadn't been addressed during their telephone conversation.
We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
Well, amidst fears that the United States is shifting its position in favor of Russia, Ukrainians in Kyiv reacted to that telephone conversation between the two leaders, with some believing that President Trump is too lenient on President Putin.
I would like it to happen, freezing strikes on our energy infrastructure, but Russia is not only hitting the energy infrastructure, but also many civilian areas and other targets, while Ukrainians are only targeting Russia's energy facilities. I think that this is a way to take away Ukraine's last leverage, while Russia will be able to hit other targets as well, which is already what they're doing.
Okay, reaction there on the streets of Kyiv. Well, let's get some more analysis. We can speak now to Mick Mulvaney, former Chief of Staff to President Donald Trump, who joins us now from Washington. Mick, great to have you with us once again here on Al Arabiya News. In your opinion, what was achieved during that 2-hour-long telephone conversation?
Well, anytime you can have a 2-hour-long conversation with somebody, it's probably going to be positive in some fashion. My experience in the White House was that the bad conversations got very short, very brief, very quickly. So if you can have that rapport and that dialogue for that length of time, my guess is that by itself is going to have some value. I'm not really sure that Trump expected this, though, Tom. I get the sense from a lot of his dialogue before he won the election, since he's come into office again, from a lot of his body language, that he thought this might be easier, that the Russians might be more interested in drawing a close to hostilities faster than they actually are. So there's a sense of frustration, I think, coming from the White House. Certainly progress was made yesterday, although now we're hearing reports here in Washington this morning, as you and I talked, that the Russians have not abided by the temporary cessation on attacks on energy infrastructure, and that overnight they may have attacked some Ukrainian facilities. That would be a bad sign. But generally speaking, I think there's frustration. Slow progress, slower than they wanted, and that's frustrating to them.
Yeah, so overall, as you're saying, not quite as simple as picking up the telephone and ending the war. And in terms of the essence and what was actually agreed upon, I mean, what you're saying is this all fell rather short of expectations.
I think so. Certainly, if your expectations were that you could have a phone call and figure out a way to get at least a temporary ceasefire, a 30-day deal, then there has to be sort of a disappointment in not being able to get that. What I think is really more interesting to watch is whether or not the Russians will abide by what they said they would do yesterday. Again, there's some indication that they've already reneged on the deal that they had reached with Trump last night. So, look, the Russians are tough negotiators. There's no question. Trump knows that, or at least he should know that. And I think he is finding it a little bit more difficult than he expected.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, within less than 24 hours of that telephone call taking place, we were getting reports from both sides actually accusing each other of violating the new agreement. A little bit of told you so from some European leaders who are saying that President Putin's rejection of that 30-day truce, they say, is proof that Moscow isn't really serious about peace. How does it look to you?
Well, that's been the knock on the Russians from the very beginning, right? Is that they're not trustworthy negotiating partners. I take everything, look, and I don't mean to demean the European leadership. I spent a lot of time there. I have a lot of friends there, but they don't like Donald Trump very much. They still, I think in Europe especially, they're still stunned that he won the election. And they're still having to deal with that. So I have to take everything they say with a grain of salt. But I think they probably have a point here, is that, again, if you asked them 3 months ago if it would be easy to negotiate a ceasefire or a cessation of hostilities in Ukraine, they would have said, no, it's very, very difficult. And it turns out that they're closer to being right than people probably wanted them to be in this country.
Some analysts saying that President Putin gave President Trump just enough during that call last night to prevent the talks as being headlined as having been
you could look at it 15 different ways. I know there's a lot of experts who make a living doing exactly what you've just described. So having been there, having been on these phone conversations, having been in the White House, if I'm on the phone call yesterday and the chief of staff certainly was listening in, or at least got a transcript afterwards, you're looking for signs of positive momentum. That's what you're looking for, right? Is you're trying to figure out, okay, where can we build on? What good comes from this conversation? A 2-hour conversation, Tom, is critical, and I come back to the length of it for a specific reason. There's a lot of information changed. If you and I are trying to do a deal together, and we spend a good bit of time talking, maybe each one of us picks up information that makes it easier for us to get a deal, something we didn't know about the other side, so we didn't know about what they were interested in. And that is how you can sort of maybe, under certain circumstances, start to build a deal that otherwise might not have been available to you. That's what I think the White House is doing this morning. Whether or not you characterize it as a failure, as a success, the media will do more of that. If you're actually on the ground trying to get a deal done, you're looking as to whether or not you moved the ball in that direction last night. And my guess is they probably did at least just a little bit.
I mean, do you think the talks, direct conversation was perhaps a little hasty and perhaps more groundwork needed to be done before that? And so that when the two men did speak, they had a pretty clear idea of what was feasible, what was achievable? Because it seems, to a certain extent, like President Trump went in there with expectations right up here and he got something around here. I mean, is that a fair reading?
I think that's certainly the textbook approach to international affairs, right? Is you have the back channel conversations, the lower level conversations, and by the time the principals, the two people at the top of any bilateral conversation talk, that most of the details have at least been hammered out in principle. That's just not how Donald Trump works. Yes, there's always going to be a role for those back channel and lower level negotiations and discussions. My guess is those discussions went on before that call and are continuing today as you and I speak. But Donald Trump wants to talk to the principal himself. He believes in his own ability to get deals done. Certainly his life experience would say there's a good bit of evidence that he's right about that. So while that is what you've just described as textbook, sometimes you need to know when to throw the book out and do it your own way. And that's what Trump is probably doing.
Sure. And I mean, you know, up until now, he's tended to regard President Zelensky as being the difficult party here. Do you think he's perhaps having a bit of a rethink? Do you think perhaps there is a bit of a rethink happening in the Trump administration about how to approach President Putin, for example?
If there's a rethink, I think it has to do with the relationship with Putin, not with Zelensky. I think they're pretty firm in their fact that they don't trust Zelensky. Look, there's a long history that isn't well known internationally. This is one of my frustrations, especially when I deal with my European friends, is that Ukraine has been and continues to be one of the most corrupt places on the face of the planet. We actually had special rules on the books here in the United States about dealing with Ukraine, even when it came to U.S. foreign aid. It is and was a very corrupt place, and that colors, I think, a lot of Trump's opinions about Zelensky and about Ukraine, generally speaking. I don't think that is going through a rethink here today. I think they might be doing exactly what you just mentioned, which is looking at Putin saying, you know what, maybe he wasn't as interested in peace as we thought that he was. Maybe he is interested in dragging this out longer than we thought he was. Maybe he is able to put his people through more deprivation than he has up to this point. And maybe we underestimated that. So yeah, again, at a 2-hour conversation, I hate to come back to the length, but a lot of information will exchange hands. So the U.S. team, the Trump team, has a lot more information available to them this morning than they did yesterday, and they might be using that to use your words, a little bit of a rethink of how to approach this.
Yeah, and we got a result, actually, a proof of some of the fruit of that telephone conversation coming into us right now. Actually, it's being reported that Russia and Ukraine have exchanged 372 POWs. That's according to the Russian Defense Ministry. So that's a result, isn't it?
It is, and that's what you're looking for in that phone conversation is, okay, if we can't make progress on aid, if we can't make progress on total cessation of hostilities, where can we start? How do we crawl before we walk and then walk before we can run? So certainly information about the POWs it would be, again, what are you looking for? Positive momentum, and the POWs probably qualifies for that.
I just want to ask you, because you were telling us about what it's like to be in the room, presumably the Oval Office, I don't know, perhaps it isn't, when a call like that takes place between President Trump and, you know, a high-level foreign leader like President Putin. Just talk us through who's in the room when that happens, and, you know, just tell us some details, you know, anything you can remember from any similar calls that you sat in on, what sort of things?
Sure, it's not any great trade secrets or anything like that. On a call of that level, again, I have no information about the specific call. I wasn't there. I'm no longer in the White House. But a call of that level, I'd be curious, by the way, first and foremost, to know if the conversation took place in English. My guess is there were translators on both sides, and that is important, Tom. And we saw this with Zelensky. When Zelensky came into the White House a couple weeks ago in that famous or infamous face-to-face meeting with President Trump and Vice President Vance, he was speaking English. I think that was a mistake. He used a line where they asked him about the clothes that he was wearing, and he said, well, you know, it's wartime. When the war is over, then maybe I will wear the costume again. In American English, that's almost an insult. Until you figure out that the word costume is the direct translation in Ukrainian language to suit, to what you are wearing right now. So there's that opportunity for a misinterpretation, or at least sort of a misunderstanding as to intention based upon translation from a different language. So I'm hopeful that at that meeting yesterday, they were not speaking English. Trump obviously doesn't speak Russian, but they were using translators. The translator would be there. Certainly the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, would be there. My guess is maybe the Secretary of State would be there as as well, possibly even the Secretary of the Treasury, depending upon the issues they expected to come up. So this would be a very, very high level sort of conversation. The Chief of Staff would be there, and maybe one or two staffers as well, probably the press secretary, so that they can figure out what the messaging would be outward. So it's a fairly large crowd on the American side there in the Oval Office.
Yeah, you make a really good point about translators there, and that's something that, I think a lot of people won't have thought of, and how those false friends, those words that don't quite translate the way you think they're going to translate, can actually give a totally wrong impression. I just want to ask you about your own experience of being in the Oval Office when a call like that happens. I mean, did you ever have situations in which President Trump was on a call and you sort of had to poke him or prod him or put the call on mute and just perhaps slip him a note and say, not so fast, Mr. President, or anything like that ever happen?
No, if there's any interaction between the president and the staff, first of all, he would solicit it. He might hit the silence button and ask for input. Staff doesn't tell the president they're doing something wrong. Typically what you would do, and that goes for every president, by the way, you would never do that in front of a foreign leader for sure. If you are slipping him notes, it's sort of to remind him that maybe there's 4 or 5 other things that we need to get to before the call is over, to remind him. He might say, now, remind me so I don't forget that we have to talk about X, Y, and Z, and you would do that. So there's some interaction between him and the staff. But let's face it, I mean, this is why you run for the job, right? This is poker at the very highest levels. The President of the United States, the President of Russia, it doesn't get any higher level than this. So the principle is really going to dominate the conversation, and that's the way it should be.
It's being reported that the two men talked about other things apart from Ukraine, some of them quite sort of light topics like ice hockey. And for some reason, that's been really picked up on by the Russian media. They seem to really like the fact that the two men talked about ice hockey. I mean, why do you think that was a winning topic of discussion?
Yeah, and our media has picked up on it as well, Tom. And again, I think this is part of the difficulty we face, and when we get our news from media generally. And I'm not casting aspersions on any particular outlet, but media, that is plural for medium, which means you stand between two other things. There's a medium between you and the information. So there's a filter, and the filter right now, the media are talking about all these ordinary things. Look, you and I, before we were having this conversation, might have a conversation about 5 or 6 different things. Your suit, the weather here in Washington, D.C. It's how human beings communicate. So to think you're going to have a 2-hour conversation and maybe not talk about, I don't know, family, sports, the weather, something else they read in the news, that's how human beings communicate most of the time. I've never understood this impression that just because people get elected to high office, they're somehow not human beings anymore. So no, it doesn't surprise me. I've been on 1,000 conversations with Trump, and I can tell you he likes the chit chat and the banter to talk about other things. Again, it's a good way to get information. You might learn something about somebody that you might otherwise not know. And maybe they talked about hockey, and maybe we end up with seeing a U.S. versus the Soviet Union, versus Russia hockey match or something like that from this, as the two countries try to rebuild a relationship after the war. I don't know, but I don't know why people are so surprised that in a conversation like that, they talked about things other than Ukraine.
Sure. So we might move on from ping pong diplomacy to ice hockey diplomacy, as you say.
It's a great way. I forgot all about it. That's exactly right.
It was a long time ago. Let's just wrap up by sort of looking forwards. I mean, clearly, most people that we've spoken to have characterized the fact that this dialogue is taking place as having been a positive thing. Dialogue is better than no dialogue. But what's the next step?
Action, something. And I'm just glad to hear the news you just told me. I'm hearing for the first time about the POW exchange. We'll see what happens in the next couple of days. I'll be curious to see how the Trump administration, if the reports about the Russian attacks on the Ukrainian energy infrastructure overnight after the agreement was struck are accurate. I'd be curious to see how the Trump team responds to that. I've not heard anything out of the White House yet here this morning, but that will be interesting to watch, because if there's an explanation, that's one thing. If there's no explanation, then you have to wonder, did you have a deal at all? So it will be interesting to see how they respond to the facts on the ground. But we'll look for the other details, how they play out. We'll also look for whether or not there's a follow-up discussion. If things go well, I would expect Donald Trump to have another call in the next several days with Putin as they try to build on any successes that they managed to have hammered out in yesterday's conversation. I'll also be curious to see how the outside world responds, most specifically European leaders and Ukraine, obviously, as to whether or not they consider this to be progress in the proper direction.
Just lastly, you are, of course, the former chief of staff to President Trump. Any parting words of advice that you would impart to the Trump presidency, the Trump administration, on how to deal with the Kremlin and how to perhaps make the next set of talks even more fruitful or more fruitful, depending on how you look at it, than the first lot?
Yeah, I've got a variety of opinions about the people that the president has chosen to put around him. I think he's got some really good people. I think he's got some subpar people. But the foreign policy team that he's got, the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, I have a great deal of faith in. And I would tell him the same thing I would tell him if I was there is, Mr. President, your call. You're the boss. Your name was on the ballot. 80-some million people voted for you, but you do have a good team here. So listen to them. And my advice really, Tom, would be more to them than to him. And my advice to the staff is always the same, which is tell the president the truth. Don't tell the president what you think he wants to hear. Tell him the truth. And if you hear him say something that isn't right, need to figure out a way to get the right information. That's our job as staffers, to make sure the president has the best information possible. He makes the policy decisions. He makes the final decisions. It's our job to get him the information. So no, I wouldn't have much advice for the president. I'd have a good bit of advice for staff, but that's what the chief of staff does.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Always a pleasure. Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff to President Donald Trump. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tom.
Now, after 9 months stranded in space, 2 NASA astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, have finally returned to planet Earth. Well, their SpaceX capsule made a fast and fiery re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere before 4 parachutes opened up ahead of splashdown off the coast of Florida. Well, this concludes a mission that was supposed to last for just 8 days, but it was dramatically extended after the spacecraft suffered technical problems. Well, earlier on this month, President Trump took a swipe at his predecessor, former President Joe Biden, and accused him of forgetting about Wilmore and Williams. And he made a pledge that Elon Musk and SpaceX would be involved in returning them home. Well, on a lighter note, President Trump appeared to speculate that the 2 NASA astronauts could perhaps have fallen in love after spending 9 months together out in space.
We have 2 people up there that Biden and Kamala left up there. We're coming up to get you. I've authorized Elon. I said, can you get them out? Because, they've been left up there. I hope they like each other, but maybe they'll love each other. I don't know.
Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Scott Kidd-Petit, a spacecraft pilot of the Polaris Dawn mission in 2024. That's a privately funded human spaceflight that was operated by SpaceX. Scott, or Kidd, don't know which to call you, joins us from New Hampshire in the United States. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Let's talk about splashdown just off the Florida coast last night. Those 2 NASA astronauts back on planet Earth. What do you think went through their minds as they reached this planet?
So they were up there for 286 days, which is a long time because living in space, it's an austere environment, and there's many challenges you got to overcome. But the beautiful thing about the human body, it adapts to its environment, which also means it's challenging once you get back to gravity, because our bodies are built for 1G. And as far as what they experience on their reentry, it's a several hours process, procedures to get prepared for it. But then they'll do what's called a deorbit burn to slow the vehicle down, so gravity can pull it back into the atmosphere, because it's traveling 17,500 miles an hour. And you got to slow down. And to slow down, it requires, the impact of the atmosphere to drag it down to about 350 miles an hour before they can deploy the drogue chutes, followed by the main parachutes. And then that process is roughly about 10 minutes. It's a pretty intense ride because of the G forces. It's about 4.5 Gs you experience on the way down, which when you haven't experienced Gs for 9 months, it's pretty impactful. And then, it's a gentle splashdown off the coast of Florida in the Gulf of America.
Yeah, they're probably pretty relieved to be back on well, sort of terra firma, although to begin with it was indeed the sea. And of course the craft that they were on would have reached some pretty high temperatures during that 17-hour-long journey back to planet Earth. I just want to ask you though, as someone who's experienced zero gravity before, I mean, what does it do to the human body? You've experienced it for a couple of days. These people, as we were saying, experienced it for 286 days. I mean, what happens to the human body under those sorts of conditions?
Yes. So, you know, when you talk about the launch process, once you get to orbit, again, it takes about 9 to 10 minutes to get to space, and you experience these G-forces, very similar to a roller coaster, even an airliner, that centrifugal force pushing on your body. But once you get to orbit, you transition immediately to microgravity, zero gravity. And it's this transition your body goes through. And the first thing you really experience is this fluid shift, because again, you're used to gravity pulling on the fluid in your body, but now it just kind of shifts up. Your organs are moving around, and this cognitive shift happens in your brain. And so it's just, you're forced to adapt to this new environment. There's also something called space adaptation syndrome that can impact up to 50% of astronauts. It's that space motion sickness disorientation. But after a while, you adapt and you become accustomed, especially after a couple days, weeks, months. You know, that's your new environment. You got to stay fit. So that's why they dedicate 2 to 3 hours a day to try to preserve as much fitness as they possibly can. But once you adapt, it's a pretty comfortable environment in microgravity.
Sure. I mean, okay, they're going to be under physical supervision, these two astronauts, for quite a while because of the physical aspects of what their journey and their long mission in space has done to their bodies. What about the mind? What does all of this do? I mean, you touched on it briefly there, but from a mental health point of view, I mean, what sort of effect does space travel and that sort of length of stay away from planet Earth do to your mind?
Tom, that's a great point you bring up. And, you know, like I talked about that initial transition, they call it a cognitive shift. It's this overview effect experience that you have looking at planet Earth from such a high altitude. And it's this paradigm you kind of got to get used to, because you're in this very sterile environment in a capsule, and you're just staring at this beautiful radiant planet. But if you're going to be up there for several months, and when we talk about going back to the lunar surface and eventually Mars and beyond, these missions are just going to get longer and longer and longer. And you have to figure out how to deal with the isolation. You're away from your families who are making big sacrifices while you fulfill this obligation and mission. And so we have to address those concerns. That we're going to experience some type of, you know, depression, isolation, and that's why they dedicate so many hours to the science and research. I mean, we had 40 experiments on our 5-day mission. Butch and Sonny, they participated in over 900 hours of science and research while they were on orbit, or I believe 500 hours. So I can't remember the number, but it was a substantial amount of time dedicated to experiments that address those concerns about those long duration missions.
Yeah, I don't have the number of hours, but I'm told they worked on some 150 different scientific experiments while they were up there. And what's your understanding as to why what was supposed to be a few days long mission turned into this 286-day ordeal? What went wrong?
Well, what went wrong was some issues with the Starliner, the Boeing vehicle that took them to the ISS. As far as the decision behind closed doors in the Oval Office, you know, I wasn't privy to any of those conversations. There's numerous options that and resources available that SpaceX was prepared to execute on if given the opportunity. But the higher that be made the decisions that they did, and they you know, stayed up there for 9 months. And I think, if anything, it's just a testament to the resilience of Butch and Sonny to be able to endure those 9.5 months. It's just demonstration of their professionalism to be able to execute the mission. It's, for me, you know, with a military background, deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq, it was, you know, you have a set schedule, but there's always slips. And you have to be able to deal with those circumstances. And it's not only us, it's our families back home as well. But they did a professional job, and we should all be just celebrating the enormous accomplishments of SpaceX and Elon and President Trump.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, President Trump and Elon Musk suggested perhaps that their plight had somehow been the fault of President Biden, the former president of the United States. I mean, I know you say you weren't privy to all the conversations, but is any of that justified in your opinion?
You know, I think they did the right thing by bringing them home as soon as they possibly could when they had the power to make those decisions. And it's just a huge celebration. You know, watching the broadcast, it brought back a lot of memories. You know, very short 6 months ago is when we were in space. And to see the vehicle and the beautiful imagery that SpaceX provided on the webcast was just phenomenal. And to top it all off, they got dolphins, you know, swimming around the capsule in the water. You know, we didn't have dolphins, not that I can recall, because our splashdown was at night. But it's just a huge celebration, and we should honor Butch and Sonny for their accomplishments.
Yeah, I mean, they're veteran astronauts, aren't they? Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. And I don't know if you know either of them. Perhaps you do. Perhaps you've met them and had some interactions with them. President Trump sort of did a bit of speculating on the dynamic between the two of them. Wonder whether you heard that speculation and what you made of it.
I'm not sure what speculation you're referring to. If you can provide a little more color, maybe I can.
Well, there was a bit of a suggestion that perhaps, you know, they might have had a romantic a connection of some sort, you know, being stranded on a spaceship for 9 months, well, out in space for 9 months. I mean, what do you make of that kind of speculation?
Oh, that sounds like a speculation to me. I mean, they're the utmost professionals. I've only been acquainted to them. It's a tight community, the astronauts, and they have a annual reunion. And they're nothing but the utmost professionals as far as my interaction is concerned.
Okay, that wasn't my speculation, just to be clear. That was the president who suggested that perhaps there'd been a little bit of a romantic interlude. Just lastly, I mean, I want to ask you about your own experience in space. And, you know, it's not often that we get to speak to someone who's experienced zero gravity. Kid, what did you do? What did you first do when you got into that state of zero gravity? What was the first thing you wanted to try out? And what did you find perhaps personally most surprising about floating around and being zero gravity yourself?
Well, you know, I flew fighter jets, F-16s for 20 years. And so I'm used to that adrenaline, but this was like nothing I've ever experienced. I mean, it's 1.7 million pounds of thrust. That's the equivalent of 70 F-16s, the aircraft that I flew. And, you know, it's just a pretty violent ride to get to space. But once the separation happens between the first booster, the second booster, you're in orbit. And you're floating, it's just this overwhelming sensation of sensory overload, especially when you get to see the planet, because it's just something we're just not used to seeing. You know, the light is filtered through the atmosphere when we look up from the planet. Looking down is just this constant evolving, because you're traveling 17,500 miles an hour, and you're seeing sunrises and sunsets every 90 minutes, every hour and a half. So it's just this beautiful, beautiful view. And the microgravity, it's, you know, you're constantly overcorrecting. So you want to move around the capsule and you just start bouncing off walls because you're overcompensating. So it's almost like this meditative state you got to get into to be able to perfect that whole floating in space. But I wish more people could experience it. And I know that's the direction we're heading. With the space economy and all these companies that are participating in this newest chapter of the final frontier. It's truly exciting, and I was just excited to be a part of it.
Major Tom to Kid Petite. I mean, what you just said there sounded a lot like the lyrics of a very famous song.
Use that one, haven't you?
There was a lot of what you said that sounded like the lyrics to a very much loved David Bowie track. Just lastly, sorry, we've got 30 more seconds left of this interview, but I mean, what did you try out what was the first thing you tried when you were experiencing that sort of sensation of having zero gravity around you?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate not to experience the whole space adaptation, the motion sickness. So I just started doing the tumbles, spinning around, and because the capsule is rotating as well. So you look outside, you see the horizon. All right, that makes sense. A couple minutes go by and it's completely opposite. So you're trying to get used to this, top and bottom, and it can be very disorienting. But I was just spinning away.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Scott Kidd-Petit, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, that is all we have time for on this special edition of Global News Today. Thank you for watching. Be sure to join us again on Monday for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.
At Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
A very warm welcome to the British Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Peter Kyle. It's indeed a great pleasure to have you here with us on Al Arabiya channel. Your Excellency, as this marks your first visit to Saudi Arabia, and you're moving now also after that to Doha. Could you share with us more about the purpose of the visit?
Well, Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom, we are great partners. We have a historic partnership, and its partnership means sharing and it means learning from each other. So these sorts of trips are really important. For me to come here has been a great opportunity to talk about some of the things that the new government in Britain is doing, but also just to learn. And there's an awful lot to learn from here, and it's been a great time doing it.
Yeah. So, Your Excellency, what is your vision for enhancing the collaboration between the UK and Saudi Arabia in science and technology and innovation?
Well, our partnerships between Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom are long-standing, but there's nothing that beats being here. So I wanted to get here as quickly as I can so that we can deepen some of the routes for the future. There's so many exciting possibilities here to explore, and I had a great time having an exchange earlier with His Excellency Al Swaha, and exploring who is my counterpart, and exploring all the opportunities we have between the briefs that we have, which are all in the really exciting, fast-growing economic opportunities of the future. So these sorts of exchanges are really important, and if we get it right, which we're both determined to do, we'll create new opportunities for wealth and job creation into the future.
What strategy is the UK implementing to strengthen its position as a leader in AI on the global stage?
The Prime Minister launched just last month the AI Opportunities Action Plan. That's increasing our infrastructure for data hugely. We're increasing our compute by a factor of 20, for example. We're also bringing AI into our government so that the productivity and the way we deliver for citizens and deliver government is changing profoundly. But also we're transforming the relationship between citizen and state by use of technology. So all of these things are underway in Britain at the moment. They're also underway in Saudi Arabia, which is part of the basis of the conversations that I've been having with my counterpart, the Secretary of State here, and we were having a great conversation today about all of the things that he and you have achieved in Saudi Arabia, and then comparing it to what we're doing. It's really exciting, some of the opportunities to learn from each other. Sometimes one of us has got there a bit further than the other, but that's where we learn, and some of us have also got information and insights we can share. And of course the open sharing nature of the relationship between Britain and Saudi Arabia is really important.
How can partnerships with Gulf countries contribute to shared goals in areas like renewable energy and clean technology?
Gulf countries are investing heavily in climate technology. And Britain is also investing heavily, but of course, because of the two geographies, because of the two slightly separate histories of scientific endeavour, it means we're very complementary in the way that we're doing it. Britain will be a great market for investing in climate technology, but also we have the expertise and scientific communities, including Oxford and Cambridge and some great leading universities, and also spin out some private sector where there can be also a great exchange.
Yeah.
These are the sorts of things that you can only fully explore if you take the time to come here. And that's why being here today, meeting people, seeing it, seeing the organizations, also seeing the role that women play in technology in Saudi Arabia, which is something that you should be incredibly proud of. It's been quite striking. Well, I'm glad, because also it was quite exhilarating for me to see and to meet, to go to, for example, the Garage, which is an innovation hub, an incubator for technology and innovation, and to see a lab that was run by a woman, mostly staffed by women, using AI to tackle some medical bio challenges that are out there is really quite extraordinary to see.
So, Your Excellency, regarding the UK economy, what steps is the UK taking to ensure that AI has a positive impact on economy and create more job opportunities?
Well, the first thing we're doing is not over-regulating AI so that so innovation can emerge from within the United Kingdom and we can harness it as swiftly as we can. But we have tasked all regulators to make an assessment of how AI will impact the sectors that they regulate so that we can make sure it's deployed safely. Because if people don't feel safe, they won't safely explore and feel comfortable exploring all the opportunities that digital technology offers to modern society. So we're trying to get that balance right. I think we're doing a great job with the third largest market for AI in the world. We also have the scientific community, which means we can develop it and deploy it as well. We've got some way to go. Not all parts of the British economy are taking up AI as swiftly as we'd like, but we're working really hard to find the measures that we can take to tackle that. Because once we do, there'll be huge opportunities for productivity, which means people and individuals can explore their full talent in the economy, but we as a country can get our #1 priority for this government going, which is economic growth.
Yeah. So talking about that, let's now talk about the education in the UK. What plans does the UK have to enhance the education and capacity building in science and technology, both domestically and through the international partnerships?
Well, firstly, this is a really exciting time for skills and skills development in the United Kingdom. We're undertaking the biggest review of our national curriculum for secondary education for a whole generation. The voice of my department and the needs of science and technology and the needs of those innovative technologies which are emerging are being placed front and centre in that review. We also have a new department, or the new unit called Skills England. That unit is there to make sure that those emerging skills will find the right place in the economy. And those people who are looking at this from other countries, Britain is a great place to come and work. If you've got great skills and you want to be somewhere, whether it's one of our leading universities, whether it's a company which is doing new and really exciting things, it's a great place to come and use your skills, fulfill your potential, and start building those international links and partnerships, which we're celebrating here on this visit.
I'm sure it is a great place there. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your time. It's actually a great pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
they've got to have a vote and a say.
It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
my campaign is going very well.
Presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on the Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation.